Welcome back to Path to Glory, the Warhammer Underworlds podcast that focuses on competitive gaming, player development, and community growth. This episode was made possible by our patrons, so thank you to everyone who supports us. If you're interested in supporting the podcast monetarily, please check us out at patreon.com/Path to Glory. If that's not possible, we still appreciate the listens and the ratings. This is your host, Aman Khusro, and as always, I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Jonathan Davis.
Hello, hello.
How art thou?
Good, good. I got to play some uh, Godsworn Hunt this week, so that was fun.
Nice.
Big
You went
damage, big
to
damage.
big damage. Yeah, you were in the store.
Yep, yep. At the
Nice.
Grapevine Citadel,
Ooh,
there's
fancy
a
pants.
player there locally that's been playing the Reapers a lot, and they are tough.
I feel like that game's kind of like a bloodbath.
Yeah. Yep.
Pure carnage, I'm sure, was scored.
Yep. Yep.
That's good. Did you take Cannon down?
Yeah, and well, in one of the games, I missed everything in the first, or I missed everything that mattered in the first round, and
I've been there.
that was just the game just kind of ended when all my guys died. But the second one, Jagathra hit Kanan with the javelin, and then Grundon went in with like a 5 damage attack with some great strength and uh, inspired attack. So,
That's great.
yep, got him.
Did you use the new Arena Mortis cards?
I think I used one, the upgrade that gives you damage and accuracy.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I don't know if it actually came out or not. It's in there.
That is a good one. Yeah, I remember I played a couple weeks before I broke my leg.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess for non-patrons, broke my leg playing soccer/football, so that was fun. Uh, got a pretty nasty break actually, and got surgery. Everything went well. I have 6 screws and a metal plate in my right ankle.
Uh,
Yeah, it's pretty gnarly. So, unfortunately, I missed Jonathan's bachelor party because of that.
it's true.
I'm sure it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, it was. We mainly just ate. I feel like it. I don't do that much drinking anymore. But ate a lot of Austin food and floated the river, and we did some skeet shooting, which was interesting. I had never done that before, but
Oh, nice.
yeah, it
So
was.
you're practicing for Kill Team in real life, or?
No, just a very Texas weekend, I think.
I love it.
Yeah.
Big fan. Well, that's good. Again, yeah. So couldn't make that, but I will be attending the wedding. Um,
Great, great.
so that'll be fun. I RSVP'd again today just in case,
Oh.
but I had already done it because it was already pre-filled out. But I was nervous about. I have like 3 weddings coming up, and I don't know. Anyways, so good. Glad you got some games in. Um,
Yep.
and you're gonna get married soon, so this is gonna be exciting. I guess we'll jump into the topic today. We'll be covering the state of the game going into season 5, which has been confirmed
Yep.
via a article on Warhammer Community, which we referenced on the last episode. We're also
We've
going to talk
seen one
about,
model, I think. Oh, sorry.
yeah, I think his name is Gicket.
Yeah.
I think it's Gicket. It's an armored. Honestly, if you told me that was a Blood Bowl miniature, I'd believe you.
Yeah.
That's how armored the Grot is. So pretty exciting stuff. And then we're also going to be covering a survey that we kind of released. I think it's been a month now,
Yeah.
where we dropped a survey into the community. Um, and we'll talk about that. And I think the reason why we had sent that survey out was so we could kind of back up some of our thoughts on the game. But, the community as always surprises us. And so there are some things that did come up that were unique that we may have not expected. And then also that we disagree with. And that's okay. Right. Um,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
should be fun to talk about all of that. So I think we'll go ahead and get started. Yeah, unless you have anything to add.
No, I think I'm ready to go.
Okay, cool. So I guess maybe we should start with the survey. Kind of talk about some of the data points there, and I think maybe that'll help us kind of talk about how or why
Yeah.
um, we're feeling the way we are about the game, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've played this game for a while, and the last couple of years have been interesting, I guess.
Yeah.
um, and I think because there's going to be a season 5, I think it makes sense to sort of gather our thoughts. So,
Yeah, yeah, and I did wanna say shout out to the Agents of Sigmar,
mm,
who actually dropped an episode very recently, I think maybe yesterday or today,
yeah, a
that
couple days ago.
a couple days ago, that it's titled "Why They Stopped Playing Warhammer Underworlds." Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to listen to it, but, um, I like the fact that they did release that because it lets us know that we're not the only content creators feeling this way.
Yeah,
Um, and so really look forward to listening to that after we drop our episode. So hopefully
yeah.
we're thinking about the same things.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend that people listen to it. They're not done playing Underworlds, and neither are we. But they
Yeah,
haven't been playing it very much, and they've been playing a lot of Kill Team, which probably something we'll talk about. But it's a good video. I think they do a good job of talking about what they like about the game, some issues they have with the game, and then some suggestions for how maybe they would prefer it to be better. So um, worth a watch there.
yeah, absolutely. And if you're not familiar with their content, highly recommend you check it out. Fun guys.
Yeah.
We are patrons to them, and they are patrons to us. So a
Yeah.
little bit of a support there. So let's jump into the survey. So a little preface with the survey. It's 10 questions. We didn't want to make it too long. It's all multiple choice. And the survey was deposited and spread through mainly on like underworld centric Facebook groups and on Discords. And
Yeah.
I think that's really important when dissecting the information in this survey because the people who are responding to this survey are people who either play Warhammer Underworlds today, care enough to be in those groups to keep up with the game,
Yeah.
or may have played the game in the past. So these are all people that um, are playing the game at some point or have. And honestly, I think if you took the time to respond to this survey, it means you're an active member of one of those groups. Otherwise, unless you're checking that Discord every day or you're on Facebook, it won't pop up in your feed, candidly, unless you go to the
Yeah.
group or unless you frequent those groups a lot. So we got, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think that,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not in the groups at all, then maybe you just play very casually or you don't play.
Yeah.
Um, and then in order to want to fill it out, then I feel like you must be pretty into it. I don't know if I
Yeah.
fill out a lot of surveys, so you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're super, super grateful for the feedback that we got. I think
Yeah.
when I cut off the survey, we had 125 people answer. The goal was 100. So I'm very,
Yeah.
very grateful that people took the time to fill out this quick survey. Um, at a certain point, we did cut off the survey. So I think there was like 3 or 4 that were stuck in limbo or who were taking it mid cutoff.
Oh,
Um, but so it's unfortunate, but I mean, I think when I looked at their individual results, it lined up quite well. So I think this is an accurate representation of the information here. So the first question that we asked is on a scale of 1 through 5, with 5 being the most and 1 being the least, how competitive do you think Warhammer Underworlds actually is? And so I guess, Jonathan, I'd love to ask you this question. Just
yeah.
like, how competitive do you think this game actually is?
Yeah, I think our own answers will be interesting on all these questions.
Yeah.
So I think I would have given this a 4. Um, yeah, I think I would say 4.
Yeah. And the answer choices were 1 through 5.
Yeah,
So I think I'm stuck between like a 3.5 and a 4,
sure.
or 3 and a 4. I think ultimately I'd probably click the 4. Um, but I'll tell you why I don't necessarily think it deserves a 5. And I would maybe question the 4 at times. And I really think, and this is one of my biggest challenges with the game at the moment, is that while this game is advertised as the ultimate competitive miniatures game.
Mhm.
However, if you look at the starter set that came out with the creepers and the castigators, it doesn't say that anymore. It says ultimate arena combat game. So maybe Games
Yeah,
Workshop is changing their mind on it. But we talk about this game that's been promoted and branded as a very competitive game. It's Games Workshop's most competitive game. It's designed to be competitive. But sometimes the game doesn't really feel competitive. And I'm not necessarily talking about dice or draw order. I think those are just things that are hallmarks of Games Workshop games or card games. Um, I'm talking more about like board placement, board roll offs. I think that's important to me. That kind of takes away from the competitive nature of the game. Um, because like you losing one roll, a 50-50 chance essentially, can,
Well,
you
and
know,
maybe it's worth defining, like, what do you, when you say competitive, like, how do you, what sort of things are you looking for?
yeah, I think that's kind of, I just want it. So I think to me, like a competitive game should be where two people both have an equal opportunity to be able to plan for the game,
Hmm.
prepare for the game, and then play the game.
Yeah,
Um, and I think whatever happens within that game, there are lots of elements of chance and luck. But I think sometimes those elements need to be reined in for a game to feel more competitive because, like, I can play a game where I want to be aggressive. And if I lose boards twice and if you max offset me
right,
or longboard me, I'll spend a third of my game attempting to initiate with you or setting up so that I can initiate and interact with you in the second round. Should my opponent choose to not interact with me as well, which that happens, right?
right.
Um, and I think that may be a symptom of older warbands. But even with a movement of four nowadays, it can be quite challenging. Um,
Yeah.
and then I also think like a significant lack of balance in the game. Um,
Hmm.
we don't get FARs timely. Um, we haven't had an errata in over a year, an FAQ/errata. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I think like if you really want like there are games like 40K and Age of Sigmar who are not branded as competitive games, but they
Hmm.
get erratas 2 weeks after their codexes and army books drop.
Yeah.
We are the competitive game,
Hmm.
and we don't get anything. We have to beg and complain, and like the community has to come together and like mass spam their email inbox for anything to happen. And
Yeah,
I'm
I
sure there
guess.
are logistical issues there that they have internally or segmentation between teams. Uh, but it just seems like that is my biggest challenge with Warhammer Underworlds is like,
Yeah. Well, I mean, to bring it back to this question though, specifically, um, like, do you think that it's a like, do you think there's something wrong with the core mechanics of the game that make it not as competitive as it could be? Or do you think that it was more competitive in the past and now it's less competitive? Um,
I think it was more competitive in the past.
okay.
I think when everyone was either playing a warband that was on the same level, or I think honestly the best time for me for Underworlds was like end of Nightvolt
Yeah.
because everything was strong.
Well, I mean, not everything, but there certainly was, a few choices. There were like maybe 5 or 6 choices that you could make out
Yeah,
of the, what, like 16, I guess.
yeah,
Um,
and I think that was most exciting because you could you could jump into like even Godsworn Hunt at one point were like really
yeah.
scary, you know. And then I think we've transitioned away from that over time to where now it's like there are some war bands head and shoulders above the rest. And then that's fine, you just play them. So, we talk about S ranks and A ranks and B ranks. Like you can
Yeah.
play B rank and above and play a competitive game, but I think the universal card pool sometimes is a
Yeah.
little crazy. Like Arena Mortis 2, don't even get me started. So anyways, I think that as you can hear, like we do have some grievances with the game, but doesn't mean we're not playing it. I mean, Jonathan played the other day. I
Hmm.
play online occasionally, so I wasn't playing the Nations Cup. So
Yeah.
um anyways, the community went ahead and answered this question. 125 responses, 85 people said 4. So
Yeah.
68% of the total responses said this game is a 4 out of 5 in terms of competitive, which it did surprise me a little bit. I'm not going to lie. But I think after I've digested this survey, I think it makes more sense.
Well, so for me, I think that the game is competitive in the way that it's not really anything else. It's not a narrative game. It's not like a fun game to play at a board game night with your friends.
Yeah.
Um, you really do just play to win. Um,
Mhm.
and so to me, it is it is designed as and it framed around being competitive. I think you're right that there are some issues where in some metas, it doesn't feel competitive because yes, you prepared, but then you get to the game and you lose right away. And it wasn't really, it was based on luck or it was based on something. And then that feels like it's not skill based, which is what we want it to be. But I'm not surprised that most of the community that did the survey feels like this is a competitive game. Because I think if you compare it to a lot of other games, it's not chess, which might be the most, or, Go or whatever. Um, but it is more competitive than Monopoly or something, maybe. I don't
So
know.
I can agree with that. But I also think that, like, I don't think it's fair to compare, maybe this game to chess or Monopoly, right? Like, I think it's
Yeah.
more fair to compare these games to 40K, Age of Sigmar, Kill Team, MCP, X-Wing, Legion,
Yeah. That's true.
and War Machine, things like that. Um,
Magic the
and like
Gathering, even.
Magic the Gathering, even Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, Digimon,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, these are all games that are, card or miniature elements that can be competitive. And most of these games now use cards, like,
Yeah.
Legion, MCP,
Right.
X-Wing, Kill Team. They're all using cards now, just like Underworlds. And on that spectrum, then yes, I would agree also that Underworlds is probably more competitive in some cases, um, out of the
Maybe.
box,
Yeah.
sure. But I think then that we talk about like ITC, right? Like, which is a 40K thing. ETC, where they design and they supplement additional rules
Hmm.
to the game and make it more competitive, right?
Yeah.
So I think, and maybe that's what this game is lacking, right? Because, like, Underworlds is a really weird game in the fact that, like, like, for example, John, right, from Can You Roll a Crit, he tried to make his own far list for an event because he saw that there was a lack of balance, but he wanted to run an event.
Yeah.
So he was like, hey, I'm going to build my own list so that I can have an event that I think is balanced and people would enjoy watching. And he
Right.
streamed it and all that. And, like, a lot of the community kind of was reacted quite negatively to it, right? Because
Hmm.
it's like, because they're saying, like, who are you to think that you can, edit the game? And maybe you can call them purists, you cannot. But, like, if you go to, like, any other game out there, there is a dedicated community that is competitive, that will edit the rules of the game or create new scenarios that are more competitively viable or balanced to
Yeah.
make the game more competitive and suit their needs. And I think it's really weird that we don't do that in Underworlds.
Well, I think there's probably two different situations where I think you have some games like Magic the Gathering or I think like MCP where the developers seem like they're really on the ball with those things. Like Magic has whole departments where all they do is balance the game.
Mhm.
Um, and then you have other games. I think X-Wing or I know some of the Star Wars games are almost completely fan driven now. Um, and the companies aren't running them at all, and so the community is the only thing running it, which is interesting. The Unfortunately, Games Workshop runs this game more like Magic the Gathering. They just don't always upgrade it. They haven't had an FAQ in a while or things like that. So I mean, it seems like we're pretty happy right after they do that. It's just a year later when they don't that um, we start to get upset again.
Right. Right. But I wouldn't be upset if there was, like, a dedicated community that said, "Hey, like,
Yeah.
moving forward, we haven't had a far list in 4 months. We can all agree that, like, these, maybe not 15
Maybe we could
cards,
all
but, like,
agree.
yeah, maybe, but I think everyone can
Yeah,
point out, like, oh, these are 2 or 3 cards, like, ready for action level type cards, where you're
maybe.
like, "Hey, this is kinda silly." And actually, it's funny you say that because there's always gonna be someone that doesn't think it's overpowered, right? It's
Well, I
actually
mean,
really funny.
this is a pretty complicated game, so it would be. I don't know. I mean, if you're saying there should be like a committee of community appointed people that do their own FAR list and FAQ, I mean, I'm not sure I disagree. I think it's just worth pointing out how complicated that would be.
No, for sure, and I'm not saying that I would be the guy, or
Sure.
I think it should even exist. I'm just saying that it exists elsewhere, so I found it always odd that it doesn't exist in this game.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding of 40K's like, big comeback in season 6 or 7 or whatever it was for them, was when the Frontline Gaming basically said, "All right, these rules are a mess. We're going to fix them." And then they started running their own tournaments with their own rule sets, with their own FAQs and their own balancing. And like eventually Games Workshop, I think, made all of the Frontline Gaming people playtesters and said like, "Fix our game for us," or something like that.
Yeah,
And now now Frontline supports Games Workshop's FAQs and stuff, but they happen 2 weeks after the release. So, I mean, yeah, it's interesting.
yeah, yeah. So, um,
And I think
and I
some
guess
people are making their own FAQs. I haven't looked too closely at it, but I've seen links around where
oh
groups
yeah,
are
yeah,
doing
yeah.
that.
The WTC did
Yeah,
World Team Championship. Yeah,
yeah. And I think if you're going to run an event of that size, then you probably have to at this point.
yeah,
How do you settle these questions? Um,
yeah,
and people aren't going to be happy with it, but people aren't happy with the normal FAQs either. So,
yeah. And my whole thing is like, if you're gonna complain, then don't play in the event. You know.
yeah, and it's not like GW is coming out with an FAQ or a FAR, and then someone else is saying, "No, I don't like that one. I'm going to do my own." Like they're just saying, "Well, no one's doing it. I'm going to do it." And so
Right.
I don't really have. I would prefer there be an official one that everybody could just do and it would work. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, at some point, either you're going to play or you know, you're not, and
Yeah.
it's more fun to
One
play if their game's balanced. So
hundred
yeah,
percent. 100% agree. So let's finish off this question. One person said that they thought it was a 1 out of 5. Three
yeah,
people said it was a 2 out of 5. 19 people said 3 out of 5. 85 said 4 out of 5, and 17 said 5 out of 5. So it looks like the game is pretty competitive in the eyes of the people who responded, which I would assume to be either active players or players who love the game, right?
yeah.
So
I mean, I would say that in general, when two players are playing this game, the better player does win more often than not.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
sure.
and I think the best of three format in particular helps that. So I would say I still sit between a three and somewhere between a 3 and a 4. I think I lean more towards 4. I may just be giving it the benefit of the doubt, but or I may also just be assuming that like right after a FAR and an FAQ, it is a lot more competitive.
I
Um,
think right after Farna FAQ, it's 100% a 4.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I
but I think
definitely
there
am
are
stuck.
times when it sinks down to a 3 for sure.
Yes, and I feel like I'm kind of the 3.5 right now. So,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
that makes sense to me. I'd be curious what the person that put a 1 um, thinks. And I'd be interested to hear that argument, um, if it was a rational one.
yeah, and I actually looked at that person's individual responses
Yeah.
just to see how they would rate the game, and the rest of the answers I sent were like pretty fair.
Okay.
So I think maybe
Yeah.
they just had bad experiences.
If that's you, we want to know. Whoever that
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Okay. Well, do you wanna take the second question?
Sure. Yeah. So the next one is, what format of Warhammer Underworlds do you play the most? And the options were Championship, Alliance, Vanguard, and Arena Mortis. How about you?
Yeah, 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 dude. I'm a total Arena Mortis player. Only play that format. No, I'm just kidding. Um,
Join our next podcast, Path to Arena Mortis.
yeah.
No.
I am an exclusive championship player. I have tried to play a Vanguard game. Wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Um, I don't have a local community that's pretty active right now. I think if there was indeed a local community that played exclusively Vanguard, I would adapt and play, or at least help facilitate and run those events if I didn't want to play in them.
Right.
But I think 99.9% of my career in Underworld has been played in the championship format
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I agree. I mean,
or
the question
alliance.
specifically is, what do you play the most?
Yeah.
And so Championship, I think, is probably the obvious winner here. I would say that like if there was more variation to this, like I really like Alliance. It may
Hmm.
actually be my favorite. Um,
Yeah.
so like if it was what if it asked what formats do I play at all, I would probably say Championship, Alliance. Um, Vanguard definitely has its issues that we should probably talk about. Um, but Arena Mortis, I don't really consider it Underworlds. It's something else. And it might be fine, but it's really its own thing.
Hmm. Yeah, and you're right that it's what the game is played the most. The format,
Yeah.
92% of people, 116 to be exact, said Championship.
Yeah.
7.2% or 9 people said Vanguard, which I thought that to be quite profound, actually.
Yeah.
Um, you know that 9 people exclusively play Vanguard or play Vanguard the most, but I thought it was pretty cool to see that. Um,
Well, I mean, maybe we should talk about Vanguard. So the rules of Vanguard are you only get to use the warbands and the cards from the current season,
yeah.
which honestly, at this point, is probably pretty doable.
Hmm.
We have
Hmm.
8 warband, or we have 10 warbands, I guess, if you can count this, if you count the starter set, which I think it does, but I don't know if it's been updated
I think
since
if
that
Vanguard is a
release.
format that is designed for newer players,
Yeah,
then it would be foolish to not include the starter set. I don't think there's any
right.
official rule that states that. But
Sure. So if we assume that there's 10 warbands and there's what, like 250 universal cards, something like that, maybe 300 with the expansion packs and stuff, like Arena Mortis. Um, my guess is that if they supported that with an FAQ and a FAR, there could be a competitive format in that. And I don't have any issue with that. Um, I mean, we're actually going to see what Vanguard is going to be like when the next rotation happens, effectively. Like, we're going to basically just have season 4 and then whatever the first release of season 5 is. Um, but presumably I mean, I guess we'll still have the FAQ and the FAR, we'll have the FAR. Um, so I think actually the biggest problem with Vanguard is that there is no FAR for it.
yeah,
Like, it's kind of just madness. The other problem is, like, if there's 2 formats, I think every community is going to be split between which format more people want to play. So if you have a bunch of new players that didn't want to buy all the previous stuff, then I think you're probably going to play Vanguard, and that's probably what those 9 people that said that are doing. It certainly is easier to buy 1 season than 2 seasons, so that makes sense to me. Um, I'm not surprised that nobody said Arena Mortis or Alliance. But I think Alliance is a little bit of an exception because I think most people would like to play Alliance. It's just you have to be really organized in order to do it.
yes, yeah, and yeah, I would like to echo that Alliance is probably. I think we've said this many times on record that it is our favorite format for the game.
Yeah,
Um, but I always kind of like treat Alliance as a form of Championship with just maybe like a little bit more restrictive deck building.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Whereas
definitely.
like with Vanguard, I think there are some issues there for sure that you've mentioned, and I completely agree. But then also like when season 5 starts, Vanguard is what just presumably the next like the first 2 warbands in the starter set, and
Yeah, and
that's
I
it.
think that's pretty flawed
Yeah,
because then you have all these people that, I mean, I guess you have all these people that might have been playing Vanguard before, and now they'll just do Championship like everybody else. So
yeah,
that works, I guess. But I can't see very many people wanting to play Vanguard at the beginning of a season. It's really only maybe halfway through the season, towards the end of a season, that it becomes viable again.
yeah.
So it's just a weird format. So
Completely agree. Completely agree. And I guess you could do Vanguard Plus, right? Which is like a fan edited version of the format where it's like you can play
right,
any warband with their faction cards, but you can only play universals from the current season. And that's what
yeah.
might happen moving forward.
I mean, if I had like in my local community, we have like maybe 5 regular people that have almost everything. If suddenly there were 5 more new people that didn't have anything, and they said, "But hey, we want to play this game. What should we do?" I think the veteran players would say, "Well, we'll play Vanguard with you as you buy stuff, and like we'll just do that." Because honestly, once the decks are made and I'm playing the game, it's still fun to play the game. It doesn't
Yeah.
really matter if I have all of the cards. Like like it makes the deck building different and maybe more simple, which I could understand why people wouldn't like. But the game itself is still the game itself. So as long as it's balanced, I don't really have a problem with it.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I just realized is we never even put Relic as an option up here,
Oh no.
but I don't think anyone plays it because I tried to run a Relic event once and we got 3 people to sign up. So,
Yeah. We also didn't put like an other. I bet there is a portion of people that just kind of do whatever they want and play with
yeah.
like half faction cards or all faction cards or try to play with their friends, and they make pre-built decks for their friends, and they give their friend a deck and they say, let's play, like, I think that is a portion that maybe we didn't pick up.
Yeah, perhaps, perhaps. Okay. Well, let's jump to the next question then. Do you think there needs to be more than one play format for Warhammer Underworlds? And what I specifically meant by this is like, do we need a relic, a vanguard, a champion?
Yeah,
Um, like, and I guess maybe in hindsight we should have made it more specific, like because I do like alliance, right? Like I do think it should exist. I do
yeah,
think championship should exist. But there's also a part of me that thinks like like let's talk about MCP, right? Marvel Crisis Protocol. I think it's a fantastic game. I think it's very well designed and balanced. I've tried to get you to play it,
yeah.
but
I played
you're
it
a
a
one
little.
game. Yeah, you're a one game kind of guy. I
Yeah.
think, I think for you, we're like, I like it, but there's just like too much to think about, and I can't think about two games at once.
Yeah, and it also, the thing that I really like about Underworlds is the way that the card decks work.
Yeah,
The fact that you have the objectives and the gambits. Um, and so for some reason, a lot of these other games don't scratch the same itch, but I do
yeah,
like it.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think the point I was trying to get across with this question was
Yeah,
like all these other games, right? Whether you play MCP or 40K or Age of Sigmar on the kitchen countertop with your friend or your brother or your sister, um, or you play it in a competitive environment, it's the same format. The game
right.
still is played the same.
Yep.
Whereas in Underworlds, it might not be. Um, and
Yeah.
so that's one of the biggest challenges I think I have is that like everyone's playing a different version of the game to an extent, right? Whether it's a limited collection or Vanguard or well, we're just playing for fun tonight, or I know what you're playing, you know what I'm playing, let's tailor against one another.
Right.
Whereas most of these other games are just they're competitive or not, depending on how you want to play, but it's played the same.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's interesting because do I think there should be alternate game modes? Like, am I upset that Arena Mode exists, or like the Giant Mode exists, or something like that? I would say not really. Um, but what I wouldn't want would be um, anything that would split the community or split event types between different game modes. Although, I mean, I guess I think Alliance is worth it. So um, it's just interesting. Like, I wouldn't want people to like. I almost don't think Relic should exist because like it's just weird. And like at best, I think it's just going to take people away from the main format. So I don't know if I think there should only be one play format, but I think there should be a primary format that is like the default. Um, and it's obvious that like that's what most people will play. I also think that that's what's going to happen almost no matter what,
Right.
unless another format came out that was like really fun, which I think is hard to do. Um, I don't
I
know. I mean,
almost feel like
what do you
Relic,
think?
yeah, I almost feel like Relic is a courtesy. Like it
Yeah,
exists as a courtesy. Like just in case you feel like we're taking away your ability to use your old cards that you purchased, you're not.
right. Kind of a
This is
loophole.
it's a loot. Yeah, and honestly, no one cares. Like
No.
no one will play Relic. No one wants to. Maybe less than
Yeah.
1% of the overall Warhammer Underworlds population. The only time I've ever heard of an area playing Relic is San Diego. This was because I have the members in the LA Los Angeles community told me,
Yeah.
and they only have like 6 dudes. So
Well, the other thing is
uh,
that if you want to play Relic, you don't really need there to be a format.
yeah, you
Like,
can just
just say
it's
you can do whatever you
technically
want.
a championship deck works in Relic too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Technically, yeah,
But I mean, basically, it's just we don't want to use deck building rules. We'll just play with whatever cards we want, which is fine, um, if that's what you want to do, I guess. But it's not. There's no point in having it.
no, I don't think so. I think you could remove Relic Arena Mortis, change Vanguard to something a little bit more compelling, and
Well,
say,
I mean, the problem with Vanguard is that like if you did have a situation where like most of the people in your community wanted to play Vanguard, then championship becomes weird. Like then it becomes weird if you want to play championship. And then like those people probably feel bad. And then if you go to an event and the event's championship, but your local meta is Vanguard, like that's weird. You're playing a different
but
game.
the Vanguard thing will only last for so long, right?
Right.
So like if everyone is a Vanguard player now, a season away from now, they won't be if they continue to play the game.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
So
If there are
they'll
people
so
that are only buying things to play Vanguard, yeah.
like eventually they'll become championship players because their collection will expand. And I think that's like the
Yeah.
whole point of Vanguard is you play it for a year and then after that you can always play Vanguard, but you have the option to play in the bigger leagues if you want, if you will, right?
I agree, but every season it starts over, and then there's always, and if anyone that starts with that season is more incentivized to play with Vanguard, and if the rest of their community doesn't want to play Vanguard, then they can't. And then if there's more new people than there are old people that want to play Vanguard over Championship, then the Championship people can't. It's just weird. It's just funky because Championship is always going to be the crap out of Vanguard, presumably. There's just
Right.
more options. You're going to have a
Presumably.
more owned deck. I mean, although maybe the lack of an FAQ in Vanguard will can sort of balance that out. I don't know. Um, but I would
Yeah,
say that it
it's
would make
interesting.
sense for them to focus almost all of their efforts on one format. Um, presumably they're going to start with their, store events and large events and things like that. And it just makes sense to stick to one format. Um, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Well, let's take a look at how the community responded. So 66.4% said yes. Well, that's 83 responses.
Hmm.
I was very surprised by this though. 33.6% said no.
Yeah, no to
Um,
there does not need to be more than one
more than
format.
one format. Yeah.
Right.
So I think a third of the people, right, that cared to fill out the survey don't think that there needs to be more than one format. And I thought that was quite compelling.
Yeah. I mean, they probably just have never played any other format and they don't, and why would they need to?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would wonder about the people that said yes. My guess is that they would still agree that there should be like a main format and they just like playing the side format sometimes. But
But I also think like a lot of the people who are saying yes are like, yeah, it's nothing's broken. Why are you trying to change it? Or why would you remove stuff? Right. Like the
yeah.
options are there for the people who want to play them. Doesn't mean anyone's going to play them.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't ask should Arena Morta exist or
I wish we
um,
had. I wish we had.
something like that.
But
Should Relic exist? I mean, format by format. I guess if we had allowed like a multi-select, or we said what formats do you enjoy playing, I'm sure we would have seen the majority Championship Alliance,
yeah.
uh, things like that. So
And those are things we can do for the next survey if people like this episode. So
one of the things I think we learned when we were putting this together is that like building a survey is a skill.
oh,
So
100%. I literally the moment it went live, I was like, crap, I need to change something. And
yeah.
it was like, you can't change your survey. You've already had 2 responses. And I was like, I love you both for responding, but I
Yeah.
wish you had waited like a minute, but we digress. So next question.
Yeah, the next one is, do you feel like Games Workshop regularly supports Warhammer Underworlds? Yes or no? What do you
So
think?
what do you think? Oh, so you asking
Oh.
me. Okay. Okay. So when we put this together, I think what we meant was like supports the game from a competitive standpoint.
Okay.
But this can mean many things, right? Like it could mean price support, store events,
Hmm.
like events and stuff. And personally, I think the answer is no.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. We've already talked about it, so we're not going to harp, but lack of FARs, a lack of consistent or timely FARs,
Yep.
complete disregard for an FAQ. Um, and then we have this game that, hey, this is our premier competitive game. We want you to play tournaments, etc. And then you run the US Open, right? Which
Yeah.
is in Austin, Miami, and New Orleans
Right.
or Tampa, I think. So it's somewhere in Florida. And you don't make Warhammer Underworlds one of the games to play.
Right.
I'm like, huh? What's going on? Like, so because yeah, we know Warhammer 40K and Age of Sigmar make you all your money, 100%. But
Yeah.
why are you not running competitive events? But you're running competitive events for games that aren't competitive. Makes no sense to me.
Well, I mean, I would say that there are I would say that those games are competitive. I think that's probably giving them. I don't know if that's a fair criticism. I think at the highest level of those games, I would say it's reasonably competitive. Uh,
Sure, okay, fine, but they're not marketed as competitive games.
that's true. Although I would say that when you play them in tournaments, I would say the tournaments are marketed as competitive events, and there are people that play the game competitively. But I agree that this game is sort of only marketed as a competitive game. Um, if it's marketed at all.
Right. Okay. So I'll take your criticism there, and I can understand that. But the fact that your competitive game is not in your competitive schedule is
Yeah.
baffling to me. Um,
And I mean, the last competitive event that was in the US, which was, I guess, LVO, had 40 something people. So it's not like they, and I think the larger events only get 200 people. And I don't know, maybe they're just trying to establish these events as big events and they know that maybe they only have so much space because I think they are allowing a lot of extra space. And so maybe they had to prioritize their two best games. So I do understand that. But it is frustrating that they wouldn't have this game as well. Um,
yeah.
but I don't know. I mean, I also don't know how popular each game is. Obviously, 40K is extremely popular. I assume Age of Sigmar is more popular than Underworlds. Um, I don't know very many people that play it, but
Yeah. I mean, so obviously, like 40K and Age of Sigmar are pretty like popular in
yeah,
Texas. Like we've got this whole like Texas Age of Sigmar event that's
is
run,
there? Yeah,
where like everyone from different cities competes. It's a really, really big deal. People take it very seriously. And then we've
okay,
got ITC for 40K, right? Like
yeah.
there's six ITC events alone in Houston, right? Like
Oh yeah, I mean, 40K is
crazy.
massive in Texas for sure.
Yeah. So, and then even Horse Heresy, very popular. You know,
Hmm,
there's a South Texas. It's not even all of Texas. There's just a South Texas Horse Heresy like club with like hundreds of people. You know,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
crazy. It doesn't even include three other major cities. It only has one of them. So,
hmm,
and then Kill Team's pretty big too. Like
yeah.
one of the so yes, okay. So we can get into some of the further details later, but I guess to answer the question for you, like, do you think it's a yes or no?
Um, I would say right now they're not supporting the game because the only thing they're doing is producing products. Um, and we've had one far in the last year, which I appreciate for sure. But it's like, as soon as it happened, there were two more releases, and now the game is like better than it would be without it. But um, so from the FAR FAQ respect, I would say they're not. From the prize support locally, which I think was actually one of the big reasons this game, a lot of people liked this game, was
Hmm.
that they would have those regular tournaments. You could get the glass, things like that. Um, they're not doing that. I assume they're going to do that again, and I assume that the reason they're not is reasonable. That between supply issues and maybe not really wanting to promote a bunch of people playing games last year, um, that I can understand. But the FAQ FAR one, I don't really think I have a hard time thinking of a good excuse for why they haven't done that. Um, and then people have also complained about the rate of release on the models,
Hmm.
um, which I understand. Um, but I think they've been coming out faster than we can meaningfully play with them,
Yeah.
which I think is understood as well. So to me, the
Or,
biggest thing
or
there
or
was,
even play with them in general.
yeah, to me, the biggest thing is the lack of FAQ and FAR support. One of the things that the Agents of Sigmar also mentioned in their video that I thought was uh, meaningful was there's not a lot of dialogue about what's actually like happening. Like we've had a couple articles from Dave Sanders, the designer, about why certain things were done and things like that, and I think the community appreciates those. But a lot of the things that come out are basically just marketing. And when they come out with Arena Mortis 2 and they say that it was like super popular, I don't really know what that means, um, because I don't know anyone that thinks it's super popular. And the Agents of Sigmar basically just said that like that was a lie. Um, and when that happens, it's just not good marketing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't make you feel like they want anything other than your money, is basically what they said. So,
I think that's fair. I mean, and it's really hard to critique Games Workshop in some instances, right? Because like at the end of the day, they are a business. They're a multi,
oh yeah,
I think they're a billion pound organization. At the very least, a multi-million pound corporation that, um, is interested in doing one thing, and that is making a profit. They have shareholders, they have stakeholders. Um, but I think like a lot of corporations nowadays do a really good job of humanizing their brand.
yeah,
And I'm not saying that Games Workshop doesn't do that because I think like the response to people like Nick Bates or Peachy, um, or some of the other community members online, or through their painting videos. Like, it was really impressive. Like, people love these guys, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, look at Duncan Rhodes, right? Like, before he left it and did his own thing, like, he was literally like paint for the paint god, like,
Yeah, a minor celebrity. Yeah.
yeah. And so, like, we they do humanize their talent really well, but I think, like, a lot of the time it gets caught up in, like, kind of like you said, like, there'll be some, what I imagine is like some random marketing guy on the marketing team who's like, I have to write this article for this game. Um, he may
Yeah.
not play the game. He or she may not play that game. They may not have spoken to the developers. They may just get a brief or look at the back, what it says on the box, and says, I have to write an article, and I'll reference all the other articles that were written, and boom. And maybe
Well,
they can reference sales as well. But like,
yeah.
Arena Mortis probably was very popular sales wise because it had some broken cards in it and it had a board in it, you know, and it
Yeah.
updated an older warband, a soft update. So, like, from a sales perspective, I'm sure it sold great.
I mean, I kind of
But
expect almost everything sells the same, unless
yeah,
people that play other games just want the miniatures, like the
Crimson Court.
vampires. Yeah, yeah, which I think is fair too. Um,
Yeah,
but I think really it's less that they do marketing material, which I think we all expect, and it's
yeah,
more that
sure.
like if that's all you're getting, then it just doesn't feel that good. So um, I don't know, and again, it's hard to tell how much of it is just because of the pandemic and whatnot, but
Right.
um,
And even there are some articles that John Bracken, because he's part of the team now, as he's mentioned on the White Dwarf articles,
yeah.
where he kind of talks about some of the design as well, right? That was included in XYZ
Yeah.
ABC. But that's behind a pay gate because, like, not everyone I know buys the White Dwarf magazine. Like, a lot of
Mm,
people do. I don't. I don't subscribe to it. I've thought about it, and I was like, I'm really not going to read all of this from start to finish. Um, if
sure.
there's an article that catches my eye, or like a cover, or like something that cool that comes with it, maybe every once in a while. Um, so, anyways, I think that I think you're right with transparency could be a really big positive for Games Workshop.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, even if when they did a FAQ and if there was something that they thought people were going to have like, or when they did a FAR, if they thought there was some sort of explanation behind that, or something people were going to be confused about, like a designer's note and more things like that. I just think people would appreciate that more. But, you
yeah,
know,
like Hearthstone is a game I love playing and play a
yeah.
lot. And every time there's a nerf or a balance update, it'll say the card, it'll say how the card has changed, which is
Hmm.
easier because it's a digital game. And then there'll always be a designer or developer's note stating why the change was made. So
Right.
instead of, and to a certain extent, like, instead of articles where all of us are saying like, oh yeah, like, I can see why they made this change, or I expected this change because of ABC XYZ 123, you could just say, hi, I'm Dave Sanders. This is the FAR list, and this is the reason why we decided to make this change. It could be one sentence,
Yeah.
and we would all be like, hey, that's great.
Well, and they have done that when they've done some of the updates to Thorns, like Bark Lab change. Like there were articles, and I definitely appreciated that.
Yeah.
I don't know how. I mean, there's always like the whitewashing of like the marketing speech. I feel like, but
Hmm.
and like it's but we might be getting off into the weeds on this one, but
A little bit,
um,
a little bit.
have we said what the community responded to on this one?
No, do you want to go ahead and share that?
Sure. So it was pretty close to being even, 50-50. It was 65 to 60. So that's like 52 to 48%. So a difference of five there, with the yeses having the 65. So slightly more on the 50%, um, which might mean that we're a little bit more negative than we need to be. We're more negative than average, but not much.
Yeah, I would say 2% difference is
Yeah.
arbitrary,
And if we
right?
voted, then it would be even closer.
Yeah, and we didn't, but maybe we should have.
Actually, I think I did. I think I
Oh,
did.
did you?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, you may have added to the no. But even at 52 to 48, like, that is pretty much a 50-50, right? Like, if someone told
Yeah.
me like, what's my chance of getting a success here? 48%. I'd be like, all right, so 50-50 pretty much. Roll the dice, you
Right.
know?
And
So,
the fact that almost half of the active community, which we sort of, talked about at the beginning, that must be who is filling this thing out. Um, that almost 50% of the excited and active community doesn't think the game is regularly supported. That does seem problematic to me.
I think that's quite a compelling statistic.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay. Well, let's go to question 5.
Go for
Um, and I really regret putting all of the above in the surveys. So
it.
moving forward, I will be removing that. But
Yup.
I do find that even sometimes it's still a really good like discussion point, and you'll see why. So, question number 5:
Yeah.
how do you think Games Workshop could better support Warhammer Underworlds? And the answer choices were more frequent and regular far lists, more prize support,
Hmm.
more official organized events such as Warhammer World, US Open, etc., or all of the above. Now, I found this to be really, really neat because, as you can suspect, 63% of people said all of the above, which is kind of
Sure.
like a cheap answer, like, oh, all of the above, click it, move on, you know. But
Yeah.
if we had to make people make a choice, I think we would have still known what the winner was because there was still 29.6. So pretty much 30% of the people who filled out the survey still didn't pick all of the above, and they actually clicked more frequent and regular far lists.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
that's all they want.
right, exactly. And I mean, because I would have said all of the above because I do want all those things.
Right.
Um, especially if I especially want two of them. Honestly, if they came back with the boxes that they had previously, where every quarter you had the special stuff and the tokens and all that for the stores, like I actually think that was incredible. I think the Grand Clash trophies, I think the Grand Clash prize kits, I think all that promo stuff that they did was awesome. So I would actually say that prize support has been, pandemic aside, like 9 out of 10, and I'm not really sure what would make it a 10. Um, I really think it was good to give them some credit there.
Agreed. I think the boxed prize support, the quarterly kits that we were getting,
Yeah,
were a big drive to getting people invested in the game and competing and playing for it. I think I miss that tremendously. I miss going to organize events. I think there should be more
yeah,
tremendously. But if I had to pick one out of the three, I would pick more frequent and regular far lists.
yeah. I think so too. I think it's pretty obvious. I think most people agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's jump to question number 6 then. Go ahead and take this one.
Yeah. So the next one is, what do you think is the biggest barrier to entry for Warhammer Underworlds? Um, the options are too competitive, don't like deck building, feels like you have to buy everything, rules bloat, and all of the above. Um, what do you think?
I think it's a combination of maybe not disliking deck building, but not knowing how to deck build correctly, or maybe it being a little bit of a daunting experience.
Yeah.
Um, and then second, feels like you have to buy everything to play.
Yeah, of the options there, I think feels like you have to buy everything is probably the biggest one for me. I would say the one I wish that we had added would be like the learning curve of the game and just how much
Mm,
you get crushed at the beginning. Um,
yeah.
and maybe that goes for every competitive game, so maybe that isn't fair. Um, but I feel like this game is not easy to be really good at. Like it's a lot of information to gather and parse um, initially, and it's only become more and more complex over the years, I feel like. So, um, so that would be interesting. That might be sort of within rules bloat. There are a lot of rules. There are a lot of warbands. Um, but I think the buying everything. I think because you basically, if you want to play a championship on a basic level, you have to buy everything, and I think that's a barrier to entry. Because why would you want to buy 16 warbands um, when you haven't even learned how to play the game at all yet?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't. You can only play one warband at a time. So.
That's true. It's true. It's really hard to play more than one warband at a time, unless you've played them a lot in the past. Then it's really easy to kind of, change
Right.
gears, if you will.
Yeah, but
But
if you were
until
a
you
new
get to,
player,
it's very difficult. Yeah,
yeah,
just mastering the nuances between the Dread Pageant and the Purifiers.
yeah,
Like I think one of the people who played them the most was like Daniel Skipala from the Czech Republic. He played
yeah,
Purifiers, and he played them for like 6 months before
yeah,
he was like, I have figured this warband out. I've learned all there is to know. Here's an article sharing my thoughts and how you should best play them. I'm now not playing them anymore. You know.
yeah. Well,
Um,
and like the way that the like when I first started the game with Nightfall, um, I quickly figured out that I needed everything, and I quickly decided that I liked the game and I wanted to play it. So I did go ahead and basically just buy all of season one all at once.
Hmm.
Um, but then, and most of that stuff just sat around for a while. I don't know if I've played more than one game with the Iron Skulls boys. Probably haven't played more than a couple games with um, the Stormcast. And like I played a lot of Farstriders, I played a lot of Magors, Skaven, um, things like that. But at least half of it, kind of sat around. And with the way that the release schedule is, new stuff comes out constantly, and it's like it sort of comes out as fast as you can figure out how to play the thing that just came out and like enjoy it. And I feel like I play a lot, and especially at the beginning, I was putting a lot of time into this. So it would be very difficult for a casual player to want to buy all of that stuff, have to figure out how it all works, have to figure out how the game works, and then keep up with the release schedule. So I just think it's a lot. Um, like it would be a lot of work. Like we put a lot of time into this game.
Yeah, we have. Um, and yeah, I do think that that would have been a really good option. I think that's a really good point. Jumping to the responses, though, how do you
Yeah.
think, or how can you could you share how the community reacted to this?
Yeah, so it was a little varied. We had uh, 5 people say it was too competitive. We had 11 people say they don't like deck building. We had 85, so the majority here at 68%, say it feels like you have to buy everything. And then 16 said that the rules bloat was the biggest barrier. And then 8 said all of the above, which I think is interesting compared to the previous question where we got almost all of the above.
Yeah.
Um, Most people probably that said that, or most people that said something else, must feel like some of these things are okay,
Hmm.
which
Yeah.
makes sense. Like, I probably think the game isn't too competitive, and I do like deck building.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
yeah,
And someone might think like, oh, there's not rules bloat. It just explains everything. Personally, I do think there is a bit of rules bloat in this game. If you look at all the FAQs and erratas required
yeah,
from like season 2 to now,
right.
significant. Um, but I did find that this was the one all of the above question, or one of the, maybe it wasn't the only one, but it is an all above question where all of the above wasn't the majority, which is, I feel like, the most cases that is the majority. So very cool. I think we can kind of run through this one pretty quickly, but this one is how often, the question 7, how often do you currently play Warhammer Underworlds? And the options were every day, a few times a week, about once a week, a few times a month, once a
Yep.
month, less than once a month. Um, and I think for us, it's probably a little bit different now. It used to go to about a few times a week to maybe, if not every day. But I think now
There's
it's,
still I like the results here. There's still one person that plays every day.
yeah, yeah. And that's probably because of
That
like
champion.
online. Yeah, that man legend right there. One
It's
person playing.
probably Tommy Convoy.
I asked him actually, I was like, "Was that you?" And he goes, "No, that wasn't me, mate." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Oh,
All right.
but so 22.4% or 28 people said a few times a week. 34%, which is the majority here, 43 said about once a week. 26% or 33 people said a few times a month. Once a month was 4% with 6 people. I think we round up to 5. And then less than once a month was about 11% of people, which was 14 people. So for the
Yeah.
most part, I think the largest answer was about a once a week, and then the second largest answer was a few times a month, but it wasn't very much higher than a few times a week. So what we're seeing is in a month, people are playing quite a bit, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting to me that 15% say they play once a month or less. Um, so that is interesting. But
Which was less than 1 month, you said?
well,
Oh,
between
you're
if you
combining the
combine once
two.
a month
Yeah,
and less than once
less
a
than one
month,
month. Yeah,
um, you know, but it makes sense.
those people could be hobbyists,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
or they could be saying like it's COVID. I don't play online, so
Right.
me
Right.
and my buddy can only get together once a month, right?
Yeah. I guess we didn't mention. I guess we didn't ask. I don't think we asked about online play in this one.
No,
Um,
no,
but
we
that would be
didn't.
interesting to know, like what percentage of people just don't like to play online at all.
Yeah.
Because I would imagine it's a fair percent. But yeah, I mean, I would say I right now I play about once a week. Um, and at the height of my interest in the game, I was probably playing, 5 days a week, sometimes online, sometimes in real life. So,
Hmm. I think I played a lot more online when that wasn't the main way to play.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I stopped playing online as much when I couldn't get my in-person fix in, which I try, but yeah, I'm probably a few times a month now. Um, Probably about once a week, I think, is actually pretty fair. So
Right. I would say previously the playing online was nice because like it would be the only way to play with like Tommy Conboy or Michael
or even
Carlin or
us,
things like
like
that.
when we would
Yeah,
practice,
that's true.
you know.
But now that it's the only way, I'm just I'm just kind of burned out. So
Yeah, yep. Okay, well, why don't you take question number 8?
yeah. So the next one is: will you continue to play Warhammer Underworlds? Um, the options are yes, because I love Underworlds. Yes, if they balance the game more. Yes, if there are new rules. Yes, if the miniatures look cool. Yes, for all of the above. And no. So how about you? Will you continue to play Warhammer Underworlds?
Yeah, I think I love Warhammer Underworlds. I think no one can question that, right? Like we have a
Yeah.
podcast, we have a blog, we love to talk about the game, we have a community we support, help, provide feedback for. Um, we love Underworlds. I think for me, I think the miniatures always look cool. I think
Yep.
I think if I'm being really honest, I think this game sells because the miniatures are fantastic. Like they will never have an issue selling boxes of Warhammer Underworlds. Case in point, Crimson Court. But even
Yeah.
if you look at Kagra's Ravagers, I saw a bunch of those on Instagram. But like people who don't play games, they're just hobbyists who bought these miniatures and painted them because they were like, these are some really great Chaos Warrior sculpts.
I actually
Same with
went to a game store while I was in Austin,
mhm.
and the only Underworld stuff they had was like 4 boxes of Kagura Shark.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Which store did you go to?
um, I think it was like Dragon's Den. Like it was a big comic store.
Oh, like Dragon's Lair in North
Yeah,
Austin. Yeah, I know
probably.
that's yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
They
right
had like
next
the
to
starter
Emerald
box,
Tavern.
but they just didn't have a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I know exactly. They have like a bunch like of a Deadpool statue in there or something like that.
Maybe there was a Wonder Woman statue that
Yes,
I
that's it. That's
noticed.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
used to go there a lot when I lived there. Um, but no one played Underworld, so I started playing Age of Sigmar there.
Yeah.
So uh, I think the miniatures are fantastic, right? They'll always sell. And I think Underworld is a really cool spot because like you can have a warband full of obscure character units,
Yeah.
like 4 vampire lords in one box, for example. Um,
But I wouldn't say that I play Underworld specifically over the rest of Games Workshop's games because of the models. I think I like a lot of their miniatures. Like I like a lot of the 40K stuff. I like a lot of the Age of Sigmar stuff.
but I think I completely agree. But I think Warhammer Underworld is a great way to get like your characters for your armies
Yeah.
with extra value, extra miniatures. In a way, Kagra's Ravagers is half a Chaos, like
Mm.
Chaos Warriors box, but like Kagra, but you get a Chaos Sorcerer, which is like 35-40 bucks by itself, right?
Yeah.
That's comparable, and then you get Kagra, who could be your sergeant. So if you have another box, you don't have to build the sergeant. Um,
That's true.
so that's why it's cool because you can do that. Or if I'm going to take the Mad Mob, like cool, I have like an Orc Shaman hero character, awesome, and
Yeah.
then I can use the other 3 as my leaders for my other units.
That's true. That's
You
true.
know,
Yep. Yep.
so that's why I think the game will always do well is because like whether the hobbyists like the Sculpt or Age of Sigmar people want to get cheaper options for their game, it'll sell because like people just love miniatures and they love Games Workshop's miniatures. Aside from that, for me, like I do love Underworlds, but I want the game to be more balanced. That's like my biggest thing. And balance doesn't necessarily mean from a design perspective. It means like post-op, far less erratas. I need it. I want it. If they can't, if they can't support that, then people aren't going to play, and then I probably will have to stop playing because no one I know will play around me.
Yeah, I mean, probably the biggest thing is will there be major tournaments like that are worth going to? I would think for
Yeah.
you, right? Like that's kind of what you want.
Yeah, and maybe we can talk about that right now, right? Because like for me, like I think for both of us, we need something to work towards, a competitive event that we need
Yeah.
to think about, practice. And we love to travel. We love meeting up ourselves, but then we get to meet more of our friends, you know? We get to room together, hang out. Like
Yeah.
literally we'll like play it all day of Warhammer Underworlds and then we'll lay in bed because you know we like we'll share a hotel and there'll be two beds. And like I just got to clarify. And then we'll be talking to each other about Warhammer Underworlds until we fall asleep.
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
it's crazy, you know, and we love that. And then we get to eat new food. We get to hang out with some of our other friends that we've made along the way, and it's great. And we just get to do what we want and love, and we get to go somewhere cool most of the time. Um,
Yeah.
but then like look at now, right? Like Lone Star Open had Underworlds at the event. You were going to TO it. What happened? We had to cancel the event because not enough people signed up. We had 4 to 6
Yeah.
signups,
Yeah.
like insane. Then we have LVO, who we're not sure is going to run the event. I think we did see it though. Maybe I think it's on the website, but
I think so.
they have like last year's rule packet, and the guy who TO'd it last year is not TOing it this year, so I don't know if we'll get a TO. And then um, SoCal is not running the event anymore, and then like Nova, Gen Con were canceled for COVID. Makes sense, um,
Yeah.
but like we just haven't had any events, and we're not like the beginning of event season isn't looking very promising for Warhammer Underworlds.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully it starts back up with season 5, but I don't know.
But like I just don't think it's a COVID problem.
I think it's I think a lot of it's been a COVID problem. When we were trying to do Lone Star Open, most of the people told me that they either weren't comfortable traveling, or what I heard more was, um, I can't make this the first thing that I do. Like, I need to go on a vacation with my family. I need to like do other things, and like so. I think the priority wasn't there, and I think that was a result of COVID. Um, so that's the impression I got. I mean, like, I think people from Canada at the time couldn't even really come into the country very well. Um, and then it's, somewhat controversial whether or not you should go to events. So I would say that all of that played a part. Um, but I also think the momentum of events and going to events and things like that has kind of been killed. Um,
So I'd like to challenge you on that
okay.
because Lone Star Open still happened. 40K was
Yeah.
sold out. Age of Sigmar had insane attendance. All
Well,
the
my
other
guess is
games are
that
still
those were
there.
mostly local players, not
Maybe
not people
that's fair.
traveling in.
But then look at NashCon that just happened recently.
Yeah.
You know, like pretty packed event. It was a big MCP event there. It was sold out.
Yeah.
And I know because I listen to all their podcasts and I read their content, and they all
Yeah.
traveled from all over the country to
Yeah.
go to NashCon.
Yeah.
We look at Warzone Houston, which is the largest event in Houston. It might be the largest event in Texas next year. You know, if things go well this year, they didn't even have Underworlds on the docket. I tried. I fought really hard for it to be there because I know all the guys. I've played with them since I was 10 years old. You know, so I've known these guys for like 20 years now, and they were like, "Hey, man, like, you know, no disrespect to you, like we love you, but like we can't
Yeah.
host an event that we know will not get as much attendance as the other games." And what did they replace Underworlds with? MCP,
Yeah.
and they ran
Well,
Kill Team.
and I mean, I would be surprised. I think those games are more popular, so I don't think they made the wrong decision if they had
Sure,
to choose.
absolutely.
So
But it's like it just kind of sucks because it's like, why is the game that I want to play, no one wants to play it? You know, and then we talked to like, you know, Gerard, you know, the professor and other people, and they're like, oh yeah, the game is thriving in Spain. Or like Nick Ramone is like the game's thriving in Italy. And it's
yeah.
like that's cool, but I don't live in Spain. I don't live in Italy. I
Yeah.
live in America. And in America, the game is not it's not very popular. And that could
Yeah.
just be a symptom of America. Like, you know, it was interesting. I was talking to Gerard about this the other day. He was like, it's I was like, I always found it interesting that like Europeans love sword and board and like Americans love guns and sci-fi. And he was like, well, it's pretty easy. It's because like our history, we actually had people running around in horses and
Yeah.
like charging into like you know pike lines and shield walls and archers. Like that's our history. And I thought about it and I was like, actually, yeah, our history is just like Revolutionary War, and that's like guns and onwards, you know? So like
Yeah,
maybe that has a play in it. But like I'm very a sword and board type of guy. Um,
sure. But Magic the Gathering is sword and board type stuff,
sure. Yeah.
and
And Dungeon and Dragons,
Dungeons
fair
and
enough.
Dragons is super
Sure.
popular and all that.
Yeah.
I mean,
But I just that's fair. I guess my point I'm making is like it just feels to me that no one is showing up to these competitive events. And
yeah,
anytime there has been any sort of traction, the event has either had a very low turnout, been canceled, or the numbers are lower than last year. And I don't think it's COVID because US Open, booming.
right.
NashCon was booming. Warzone Houston, 40K, Age of Sigmar, and Kill Team are sold out.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is the other issues, because if the game was, like if everybody was really excited to play and the game was the funnest that it's ever been, then I think people would make stuff happen, and there would be more new players, which I think a lot of those other games are getting new players. Like people are converting people to play those games, which
Sure.
I don't feel like is happening. I don't think there are that many new Underworlds players.
I don't think so.
I could be wrong. I mean, I think the people that do play really like it because it is a really good game. Um,
100%.
but I just don't think there's that much. Uh, I don't know how much turnover there is with old players, but I don't know how much new blood there is either. So
Yeah. And I don't think I'm being like I really hope that I'm not coming off as like a negative Nancy or something. I'm just being like I'm being realistic. Like
sure, yeah,
this is my reality. You know, like your reality may be very different if you're listening over in Europe or or maybe in the Northeast where these events are maybe people are more tightly packed. But my reality
yeah,
living in the state of Texas and going and having the option to travel to states like California, Washington D.C. Area, Tennessee, and etc. Like or Indianapolis or in
right.
Indiana, excuse me. Like I can't do that anymore because of COVID, primarily 100%, but also because the events running that are running aren't supporting my game. That's
Yeah.
my reality.
Well, and in reality, there aren't communities for the game in a lot of those areas. They're not very big ones. So
Sure.
I
Yeah.
mean,
I
if
mean,
there was a big community, then the community would figure out a way to do an event. Um, we're trying to tack an Underworlds event onto a 40K event. Maybe that'll work sometimes, but if there's not a lively community to support that, then you know,
but there is a lively enough community to travel because
maybe,
LVO gets 40 people. Um,
yeah, maybe,
like Gen Con got like close to 30. Nova get like 40 people. And maybe those events would have retained those numbers. We don't know. We don't have anything to benchmark that off of. But
right.
when events are just being removed from the docket entirely, and for the last 4 or 5 years they were running Underworlds at once, or 3 4 years rather, um, that's my challenge.
Yeah, I mean, so do you think that those events should have tried to have the game and then just seen what happened? And then if they didn't get very many signups, then I mean, most likely most of those events have some sort of outward facing way to take in, um, you know, feedback from people, and they probably ask what events they want to have. If they only have you saying that you want to do Underworlds and nobody else says anything, then
Well,
you
that's
know,
exactly my point, right?
yeah,
It's like no one wants to play the game anymore.
okay, yeah. I mean,
That's my
I
point.
wasn't sure if you were blaming the events or blaming there just not being very many players.
No, 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 no. I will never ever blame the event organizers. They're
Right,
always going to run it. They'll always facilitate an event for a game
right,
that people will pay for.
right.
No
Well,
one's
I mean,
paying for Warhammer Underworlds.
if we had 100 people in the United States that said they wanted to do an event, well, we could probably run an event,
But
um,
I guess the
or
point I'm
find
making,
somebody to do
Jonathan,
it.
is we
Yeah,
don't have 100 people.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
that's
Yep,
my challenge.
I agree.
Yeah,
I guess we can go to the next question.
yeah. Did we answer? We didn't give the responses for
Oh,
question 8. Do you want to do
yes,
that?
sure. So the top answer was 82, which is 65%. Said they will continue to play Underworlds because they love it. Fair enough. That's what I would have answered, I think.
Yeah,
Um, but then the next one is 9 would say yes, they will if they balance the game more. Then the next one said was actually 0. So no one said that they will play the game they will continue to play the game if there are new rules. So that was no one's deciding factor. Um, for if the miniatures look cool, 5 people said they'll continue playing as long as they continue to look cool. And then 22, which is 17%, said for all of the above. And then 7 people said no, they will not continue to play the game, which is 5%.
And I really wonder what the no is for that reason. And maybe we should have asked, why will you no longer? If no, why? You
Yeah.
know, um,
It's funny to me that they they filled out the survey, but they're not going to play anymore. But
yeah, but I guess that's kind of what we were hoping for. Is like people
yeah,
who care enough to answer,
yeah. I
but have
mean,
made a personal decision.
if you've played this game for 4 years and you've seen what they have to offer, then maybe you've enjoyed it, but you're ready to move on to something else.
Yeah,
I
hundred
mean,
percent, 100%.
theoretically, if I started playing another game that was better in every way and I enjoyed it more, then I would probably stop. So, um, that just hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened for me yet, but there are some games tempting me for sure.
Yeah,
Um, okay, well, next question then: how many boards would you prefer to be viable at any time in the main format of this game? I always find this question to be interesting. Um, you
yeah,
can tell who the psychopaths are on this one. Uh,
yeah,
but the answer choices were 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 or more. And when I
yeah.
and when I mean by boards, I mean board sides, not necessarily like a double-sided board. This is just one side of a board.
Sure.
So, Jonathan, my question to you is: how many boards do you prefer to be viable in this game, given the fact that this game is supposed to be something that is easy to travel with, it's compact, um, and it's supposed to
Um,
be quick?
so I would say that I would actually be okay with 8, which would be 4 physical boards. I don't know if we need that many, but that's like 2 starter sets, right?
Yes.
Um, so I would actually be okay with that. I think 4 would be okay. Two sides. Um, I mean the other numbers, you can't really do 5. So, but I'm actually not sure if that's how most people read this question. Maybe like I'm really not sure. If it's how many physical boards do you need, then I would say 4.
Hmm.
If it's board sides, then I would say 8. And I'm thinking
Yeah.
people probably read it as physical
As
boards.
physical boards, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is another lesson learned from the survey. But
Because otherwise, I don't think 5 and 7 are even possible. So I don't know.
yeah, I think that makes sense. Um, so you would say 4 boards.
Right, because just the starter set boards don't quite feel like enough to me.
Right. Right.
Especially after having the situation now where I own like 15 boards or whatever it is, and being able to
Right.
choose from multiple boards. I think it would be weird. I think it would just be weird if this was a new game that someone was showing me and they said, "Yeah, you get to choose between these 4 sides of these 2 boards." I would say, "Okay, great." So, but to me, 2 starter sets at a time seems reasonable.
I kind of agree with you. I also think I think there's board bloat for sure. Um,
Oh yeah,
like Arena Mortis board, another Arena Mortis board.
yeah.
We're getting to the point where they're just reprinting boards on different colors. You know,
Well, I mean, the good news is that neither of those boards are overpowered enough that you have to have them.
that's true. But I will say last year's Arena Mortis board was a pretty solid board. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That
so
was a good balance too. But it
yeah,
isn't necessary. And the problem is that when you have 9 boards and you're playing a warband, there's usually like 4 boards that you consider. So why do you have the other 9? I don't know. Like the game doesn't get meaningfully more strategic with more boards. So
I agree. Yeah, I think
what do
if
you think
for
the right
me,
number is?
I think four
Okay.
boards, 8 sides. That's it.
Okay.
I don't want to travel more than that.
Yeah.
Um, I
Yeah.
think right now I'm running around with 6 boards. I'm just like, why? Why
I
do I have
think
this
I
many?
think I have like 8. I mean, how many illegal right now?
I
I
think
think
6 or 8. I think 6 or 7 actually.
we have the starter set that comes with 2. And then we
And
have
last year's starter
then we
set
have we have
that
6
came with
from the 2 starter sets, and then we have Arena Mortis, Arena Mortis. I think we have 8. I think
no
we
no
have
no.
16 board sides.
We have 2 and 2 from the the starter sets,
right?
or from the core box, Beastgrave and
So
Diregasm.
that's 4.
And then we have, oh yeah, you have 2 more from the starter set, so that's your 6.
Yeah, and then you have 2 Arena Mortis.
So actually, yeah, there's 8. Crap. That's way too
Yeah.
many.
There's
That's
6
16
yeah,
board
there's
size
16 and,
slots.
like, there's gotta be, like it's gotta narrow down to 4 relevant choices, yeah.
Yeah.
Something like
You
that.
know what would be you know what would be interesting? If you could say, um, when you're submitting a deck list to an event, that
Yeah.
you have to pick 4 boards,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that would be cool too.
Mhm.
So your opponent knows what boards you're playing as well. I think that
Yeah.
would add another interesting competitive element to the game and solve this problem.
And it would actually just be, like, an excuse not to carry around so many boards because most people literally just pick the same 4 boards every time.
Yeah.
Like, you have, like, you might have a defensive setup, you might have an offensive setup, you might have a diagonal board setup, things like that, but it's like, "I'm gonna play this board, and then because I can't pick the same board again in the best of 3, I'm gonna pick the other board."
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
I think so.
Um, I think people mostly agree with us. I'm assuming that they read the question the way that I think we
We're
did, where
talking
it's
about it right
physical
now. Yeah.
boards, because no one said 2 boards.
No.
One person said 3 boards, and then we had 22 say 4, 11 say 5, and 43 or sorry, we had 54 say 5 boards.
No, we
That's
had 54 say
43%.
6 boards
Or 6 boards, yeah, sorry.
for 43%. Yeah.
Right. No one said 7, 19 said 8, and then uh, 18 said 9 or more.
Yeah. Crazy people. Thank you for filling the survey, but that is way too many.
Well,
That
and
is you need a miniature case just for that.
well, and it's also possible that we didn't word it specifically enough, and maybe those people thought we meant sides of
That's
boards.
fair. We'll
So I'm
give you
really
the
not
benefit of
sure,
the doubt.
but um, I think most people want. I think most people agree with us. I like a lot of people said 6 as well. Most people said 6, I guess,
6
43%.
makes sense because starter
Yeah.
set, starter set, starter set. Boom.
Well, that would be. Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, and that would be
That
okay.
makes sense.
That would be okay.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, we had 6 when it was like we had 6 when in a normal season without the
Yeah.
starter set. Um, so it's not bad. It's just right now with the starter set, we've kind of tipped over the edge of like this really doesn't matter. Um, so
I completely agree. Okay. Well, last question from the survey.
yep.
Do you think hard control strategy should be viable in this game? And the reason I think I wanted this question on there and when we talked about it was because I was talking to a lot of people and they were complaining to me. Just it just so happened coincidentally that it was just a bunch of complaints in quick
Hmm.
succession about
Yeah.
a control build for vampires.
Oh yeah, the hunger
And it was like,
and lost pages and stuff.
yeah, it's silly. Try playing against it. Um, you can it's beatable, but it's just like it's obnoxious. And so like, and I kept thinking to myself like, I was like, well, this is not fun for me to play against.
Yeah.
I'm not going to assume what's fun for my opponent. So I was like, all right, maybe I'll try it. And I played it, and I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I guess if your fun is winning, then yeah, this is a fun deck because like you don't really have to do much. You put Gorath in the back, you give him hunger until he has 5 wounds, and then you give him every upgrade you can, and he won't die. He physically just will not die.
Yeah.
And then you have Duval, Anais, and Velas just kind of wreak havoc and do whatever. Like I played an opponent in the Nations Cup. I thought it was so funny that we submitted this survey, and then afterwards I played the same strategy, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, let's see how it goes. And I'm playing Wraith Creepers, right? Because I was locked into that warband, and it's crazy. So we play. I don't know if it was. I think we played 3 games. I won off tiebreakers on the first game, but every single game we played, Drepper died in the first round. And it wasn't because like I'm misplaying Drepper. Like I have to kill him so he can't. I am the beatdown. But he just charges me 3 times, and he just hit me every single time.
Hmm.
And it was a little unfortunate because it's like, okay, Drepper's dead, fine, I'll figure it out. But then it just got to a point where it's like, if he hits more than I do, then my guys will die, and then I have no chance of killing Gorath. And that's exactly kind of what happened was that, and he played it well, 100% kudos to my opponent. But I just kind of sat there and I was like, yeah, maybe if I had rolled a crit defense or he had missed, maybe the game would have been different. And that's always a possibility. But at the end of the day, if I have to have better dice than him to win the matchup, I think that's an issue with the game or the
Well, how is that
matchup
any
rather.
different than like an aggro strategy? If they roll better than you do, don't they win?
Yeah, but because like for me, like I don't think aggro is that simple. I think aggro is like glory denial as you're trying to kill things. Like if you just charge 4 times and that's your game plan, like that's
Yeah.
cool. But like your tech cards better help protect you. Like whenever I was running Wild Hunt, like I was spending a restricted slot on Restless Prize
Right.
because I'm trying to disrupt you while kill you. But him was
Yeah.
just like, I'm just gonna kill you while my guy turtles in the corner. I draw my deck, I score
Hmm.
my cards, I win. Um,
So I guess what you're saying is that even if his attacks hadn't hit, I mean, it sounds like even if his attacks hadn't hit, he still had a certain threshold of glory that he was going to be able to score no matter what,
and
unless
get
you were
upgrades
able
that
to.
kill Gorath. Because there's
Yeah.
even a card now where it's like reduce the number of damage by number of hunger counters you
Right.
have. So
Yeah.
like when Gorath is sitting on 5 hunger, I'm not killing him, you know?
Right. And I guess he might not score some of his hunger stuff because of that, but he's still going to get all the glory from the
The lost pages.
last
Because
pages
I
and
need
whatnot.
I
Yeah.
need to kill you.
Right.
And
Right.
he's, not. So maybe it could be a flaw in the matchup. Maybe it was a good matchup for him. But it reminded me of other matchups that we've had, right? Where it was like
Sure.
Heroic Steelhearts or Mollog Tomes, um, even like Eyes of the Nine Tomes at one point. Like that's how I got my glass with Eyes of the Nine. I wasn't fighting
Yeah.
anybody. I sat in the corner and put tomes on Vortimus and won the game. You know, um, so I've done it. We've used it to success. Like Davey played Mollog tomes to help us win as a part of a team effort for the
Yeah.
grand battle. But I've always left those games with a not so pleasant afterthought.
Yeah.
And so that's why, so that might just be me projecting onto the survey, right?
Well, I don't know. I guess my criticism of your example is that if that was an aggro deck, I think you might have lost anyway. But I think in general, if I have a deck that will get 15 glory no matter what you do, then that might be a problem for the fun of the game.
Yeah, I would say that like, I don't think if I because like the deck lists were open, right? So if I knew he was aggro,
Mm,
then I wouldn't have put Drepper and my guys, somewhat aggressively, so that I can also make charges myself and make
gotcha.
kills. So if he's the beatdown, come to me, I'll kill you.
Yeah, yeah,
And you
yeah,
can roll better and you can crit and get through my defenses, and Drepper can still die, but
yeah.
there is no there, in that matchup. I am a race against the clock.
Right, right, right.
So if things don't land neutrally or in my favor, it continues to make the time shorter on my clock.
Well, and probably even neutrally, you're at a disadvantage, and that's why I guess
Probably,
that's
yeah,
why you're the beatdown. But I mean,
yeah,
to me that's the problem with a lot of these control decks is like they just have this guaranteed glory floor, and it's not like an objective deck where you can mess up their positioning. Like an objective deck probably has 20 glory in it, and if you sit there and let them do it, they'll score it all. But
yeah,
that's different than a control deck in a lot of ways because like you actually can stop them in a meaningful way. Um, compared to usually a control deck will either have one failure condition or sometimes none when we've seen the like really, really awful ones. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think I agree. But it's also, I mean, the options were yes with some, or yes, we think they should be viable, or yes with some limitations, or no. Depending on what we mean by with some limitations, that might be where I'm at, but I'm not sure.
yeah. I mean, I guess I don't mind like a form of control. Like I think Eyes of the Nine.
Yeah.
I don't mind that.
But
Like
that
they were
might
trying to.
also be because they're relatively weak. Like,
Agreed.
so
Agreed.
like, yes, they're doing hard control, but like they're just not that great at it. Like they're only going to be ever so powerful. It's rare. It would be pretty rare that we would be like, oh, this Eyes of the Nine meta is awful. Um, for me, like the biggest thing is that like I think that these kind of hard control decks break my um, expectation of what the game is supposed to be like, and that's why I don't enjoy them. And I think
Yeah.
most people do feel like that. Um, but I don't know. It's kind of difficult to. And we've talked about it before, and I think there are different valid opinions on it.
Yeah, but like the fact that like 64% of people said yes with some limitations, I think is relevant,
Yeah,
right? Because they acknowledge that control exists. It probably should exist, but not
right.
in its current state.
Yeah. So 64 said that it should exist with some limitations. 20% said they think it should exist, and then 16% said that they should not exist at all. Which makes sense. I mean, I don't know. I'm just not sure how control as a mechanic works because what we've actually seen in the past is the control decks that actually function in a competitive way enough to actually play them are basically just use a combination of cards that gives them this like ground floor of glory, and then the rest of their cards just stop the other person from scoring anything.
Yes.
And I think that that's okay. I just don't think that it's um, what I don't like about it is that it a lot of the time you'll win the game in the deck building phase, because a lot of people just aren't going to be able to like manage what you're going to do. And maybe that's their fault. I think that would be the argument, is that they should know that this sort of control strategy is viable and they should be playing something else in order to beat it. And I think that from a competitive standpoint, that actually is true. If Tome Mollog is a thing and you're trying to win a tournament, if you're not ready to handle Tome Mollog, then that's a problem. Um, and it's not anyone else, it's your problem. You have to figure it out. Um,
Right.
but from a game design standpoint, I don't think it doesn't seem like that's what the game is supposed to be like from
No.
everything that people say. And all the balance, I mean, they've been nerfed over and over and over again. So it seems like they don't want the game to be like that. Um, but I don't know.
Well, let me ask you this, right?
Sure.
Like, think about, so when I've seen new players try to get into Warhammer Underworlds, whether locally or heard stories online, the first thing that I hear that the design team can't control, this is just a community etiquette issue, is that like, oh yeah, I bought, a warband and the starter set, I put some cards together and I got kicked, I got raffle stomped by
Yeah.
some dude with like a fully fledged championship. In that situation, shame on the person playing the championship deck. Like if you know you're playing against a noob who is learning the game, then you shouldn't raffle stomp them into the ground, unless it was like a competitive event. Then they signed up for it, 100%. But if your goal is to help someone into the game, you shouldn't do that, in my opinion. Secondly, and these are the ones that stand out to me the most, is like you run into these situations where it's like, oh yeah, I couldn't do anything,
Yeah.
or my warband just died. And the warband dying part, like that happens, variance and dice, sure. But
Yeah.
like the most people that I knew that have quit Warhammer Underworlds happened during like three phases. Number one, Relic Steel Hearts.
Yeah.
I literally saw people walk away, go. I was in the it was in the game store, and some guy after the second round was like, "I understand what you're doing. I concede. Can you explain how your deck works?" The guy did. He said, "Okay, sounds good." Took his collection to the manager. It was an independent store, and said, "I'd like to pull this for sale in your box." And I'll take, in the store owner takes a certain percentage, or you can only
uh,
buy in gift cards or whatever. And the guy was like, I'm done. And I kind of just stood there, and I wasn't like a very big content creator at the time or anything. I think I just started the blog Hexes and Warbands, and I kind of just stood there and I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. Um,
I
and
guess
then,
some
and
people
then,
know what they want. And
yeah,
that
and
wasn't
I
it.
all respect to that guy, but he was just like,
Yeah.
this is dumb. Um, he's a very intelligent player. I know exactly. He's a really nice guy. He does really well in all game systems. Um,
Yeah.
and then I thought about it afterwards, and I was like, all right, well, that's unfortunate. And then Mollog came out, and a lot of people left because Mollog kind of just controls you in a different way. He just kills you, right?
Well, I mean, I would say that. Well, why don't you go? I think you have a couple more examples.
Yeah, yeah, I do. And then Curse Breaker Magic spam, where it's like I don't do anything but I empower in the corner. I know
Yeah.
people who have left the game because of that. Um, I Tome Monologue, I know people who have left the game because of that. Like, personally, people from my
Moloch Part
community.
2.
Monologue Part 2,
Yeah.
we get to Beastgrave and Grimwatch happen, and people left the game because of that.
Yep.
Um, and maybe Grimwatch wasn't a control issue, it just happened to be,
Well, it
just an
was a
issue,
yeah, yeah, go ahead.
you know? Grimwatch just kinda just scored automatically. And then after that, I don't think there's any been, to me, like like a focal point, because I think the game took a turn for the better. I think the only time I could think of something was like remotely close to that was like that crazy Hrothgorn build that Duncan made.
Yeah.
But then after that, not so much. Um, and then since Dire Chasm, it's kind of been up and downs, with crushes and stuff going up and down and stuff like that. But like those are all the four as I mentioned in the beginning. Maybe if you remove the just Monologue, and if you just look at Relic Steel Hearts, Empower Curse Breakers, and Tome Monologue,
Well, and
even Feed the Beastgrave Eyes of the Nine, it's kind of dumb.
I mean, I would say that the thing that all of these things have in common, even Moloch, even Grimwatch, is they break most people's expectation of how the game is supposed to be played, and they don't allow meaningful interaction from the opponent. Um, like like Objective Grimwatch didn't really care if you were there or not in their the height of their silliness, because literally no matter what the combination of cards they had in their hand were, they were going to be able to score some surges, and they were going to be able to just keep fighting you. And then Mollog is just doesn't belong in this game. Basically, he hits too hard. He's too hard to kill. All the concepts that work in the rest of the game don't work with Mollog. Um, from a design standpoint, he breaks too many rules. And then Control is just you know it's the problem is that it doesn't care what the other person does. Like, at its hardest, it doesn't care what you do. And then people are trying to play warbands that presumably were designed to play a certain way, and it doesn't matter what they do, they can't beat this control thing. And I think that's what people don't like, because they want there to be a fair chance, and then they want their decisions to be what makes them win the game. Not I don't think most people want to lose the game before the game even starts. And you can do that if you make a bad deck. Sure, I think there should be a portion of that. But I feel like a good control deck is a good control deck because it auto wins 2/3 of the time. There's it says, oh, I don't care about this 3/4 of the or 2/4 of the meta or whatever. Um, and now I just have to think about the other side that I can outplay, you know?
And I think there are other games where like control is really useful, like Hearthstone or Magic, right? Like blue play is control play, and
Yeah,
but the reason why it works in Magic is because it's balanced. As you mentioned, there are whole departments that design the balance, but also like from the ground up, the game is always revolved around like each color being good or bad against other colors.
sure. I also
So like,
think that control may just not work very well in a miniature game.
agreed, 100%. That is another point I was going to make, but I'm glad you said that. Um, because it's not, because again, there's also a lot of variance. Like if you want to play a control game and then I'm trying to hit you and I miss, it's kind of the same concept that we talked about earlier with my example, which is if it's not a positive outcome for the attacker, it is a bad outcome,
Right.
as you inferred, like neutral and or otherwise. And so I think that's, again, I can go on about this for a while, so maybe we should just pause here. But
Well,
I,
I mean, in a miniature game, the only things you can do are stand on things and attack things.
mhm,
That literally is what it boils down to. The card side of it opens up this new part, but most people that are playing this game want to play it because it's a miniature game, I
yeah.
think. And then if you just build the deck and you win based on the deck, and the miniatures just kind of it doesn't really matter what they do. I just don't think most people enjoy that, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think that's why Warcry has done so well locally for me, not for
Yeah,
me, but for my community. Is like because I literally am like, hey, Underworlds is just a straight up better game in my opinion, and
yeah,
here's why. And they're like, I completely agree with you, but I just want to go hit things with my friends.
yeah.
And I'm like,
Well, and
oh,
kill
okay,
team too. I don't think you can do control and kill team.
no. Well, the board's too small, the movements are too long.
Right.
Um, like people can start sniping from the moment the game starts. Like like
Yeah.
I guess you could conceal, but each like faction has like certain objectives that they try to score, like that are randomly drawn. So first, you'll never know what you're gonna get, and then also like like some of them will be like hold the center point,
Right.
and if you're playing like Krieg guardsmen who maybe aren't very tough and they have to hold the center point, like you can do that. But like if the orc team that you're playing against snipes your medic or kills your medic, then it makes it much harder for you to like hold the point because they're tougher than you physically.
Right.
Um,
And I would
yeah.
actually like I think that this game is sort of uniquely breakable because of the way you can just pick exactly the cards that you want,
Yeah.
and your deck is always going to be your deck. It's always going to do exactly what you want it to do, and you can't control the order that it comes out in, but you can do everything that you can to like massage the um like flexibility of the order that it comes out in. Like the best decks, like they don't really care what combination of cards they get. Like there might be
Hmm.
that one, very, very small chance that they're going to get three end phase cards, and that's annoying. But, in general, almost every combination is going to work. And in a good control deck, it's going to work and it's going to stop everything that's coming at you. So I don't know. I mean, I just don't think I don't think it's what this game needs. And I think that the designers should hit hard control, quote unquote, pretty much every time it comes up because the game should be a skirmish game, arena game, where people fight and hold objectives, basically.
Yeah.
That's what
I
I
think if
think.
you want to play hard control, play like a game that's designed for it, like
I mean,
Magic Blue or
because like
Control Priest and Hearthstone, right?
yeah, I mean, in a perfect world where control, if you're playing a control deck, what you want is you want to be able to knock the other person off any objectives they try to get onto, and then you want to stop them from getting near your fighters. So what that means is you just have better cards than the person trying to stay on the objectives, and then you just stay away from the opponent. And like that isn't fun for the other person. And I don't think that every deck I make has to be fun for the other person, but I think from a game design perspective, the game needs to be fun. So I don't blame the players. I just think I think the game design needs to be, and the game balancing needs to be centered around making sure the game is interactive.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and I kind of agree with it. Um, for me, I think that there's no more to add to that. Actually, I think we've kind of
Yeah,
covered that from a bunch of different bases. Um, so most people think control should stay in the game, sure, and I don't think we would disagree with that. I think the control that we have challenges with have been the ones that have been
yeah.
significantly nerfed into the ground. So
Well,
maybe
I
let's
mean,
not let that happen. The scenario even evolve in the first place.
and I do think that it's possible to have a defensive, which might be called control style. And I do think there are some warbands that I do like that I consider to do that, like the Dread Pageant, some of the Eyes of the Nine builds that are about like holding specific objectives or holding more objectives. Like I mean, I do think that is interesting and complicated to play, but it's still trying to do things that could fail throughout the game, and it doesn't have a necessary floor of glory that the opponent has to somehow get over, or it just auto loses. So, to me, if there's a way to do interactive control, then I'm all for it. But um, with some of the examples that we've seen in the past, I don't think are healthy.
Yeah, I think healthy is a really good word. Like, I'd love to see a warband that's like, hey, we want to stay in our own territory, but we want to kill you in our territory. How do we do that? And then there might be
Yeah,
cards that or abilities that they yank you into their territory, or they can go
sure.
into your territory and then push you out of your own territory into their territory so that they can kill you there. Like that could be cool.
Yeah.
And that's not control, but it's defensive. And I think a lot of times defensive gets synonymous with control. But
Well, I mean, I think there's control elements to cards like dominant position and uncontested.
yeah,
Um,
true.
and to me, that's great. I mean, if I know that what you're trying to do is not let me hold any objectives, that's you controlling me. And like, if you have the tools to make that happen, then I think that's awesome because I know I can try to stop it, and it's like it's meaningful. It's meaningful gameplay. Um, if I know that you just need to get through your whole deck to score to the end, and there's nothing I can do about that because you have the card draw in your hand or in your deck, then like that isn't meaningful. And same with the tomes. Like if I know I have to kill every single fighter in your warband so that you can't score, tomes, then that just isn't meaningful because that's not something that most people can do.
Yeah, same with keys, right?
Yeah.
Like they might be too slow now, but at one point they weren't. And it's like, oh, I have to make sure, and not only have to kill most of your fighters, I have to make sure, all of them or some of them aren't on specific objectives,
I
or
actually don't
you'll get
mind
like
keys. I don't mind keys nearly as much.
they can be quite they were quite powerful in the molten shard pit heyday.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if it was the keys' fault themselves or just like how good everything. Like in a meta where objective play is the best way to play, keys are really really good. Um, but they're kind of just icing on top. I feel like,
Hmm.
but I don't know.
Yeah.
We could have another conversation about keys. I'm sure, and it's been a while since I played them. So
Yeah, I think they're just too slow now, and the game has evolved to be quite different.
yeah,
But yeah, I guess the point we're trying to make is, maybe we don't necessarily agree with the community, but we're just two people. So, you know,
yeah. I mean, it's also hard. Like I don't know what most people think when we say hard control. I don't know what they mean with when we say yes, some limitations. I mean, so
yeah. And this is all a learning process. Like, I'm sure we'll do more surveys in the future,
yeah.
and they'll be better and more focused. So,
Yeah, and if anyone disagrees with what we're saying, I'd love to hear it. So,
yeah, 100%. So that concludes the survey. Jonathan, I know we talked about at the beginning. We wanted to share like our current thoughts on the game,
yeah.
and we kind of elaborated quite significantly actually throughout the course of the survey dissection. But I think it would be really helpful to kind of get, where your head's at and what you're hoping to get out of the game in season 5.
I mean, the thing that would make the biggest difference for me is if more people locally started playing the game. Um, like on a day-to-day basis or week-to-week basis, that would probably have the most like bang for the buck. When I think about what would need to happen for that, I think the game would need to be easier to get into. I mean, I think the mechanics of the game are probably going to stay the same in season 5. Um, and I like the mechanics of the game. I like how the cards work. I like how the fighters work. Like there's not really anything wrong with it. But I think the fun of this game is trying to figure out ways to build decks that beat other people, and then playing other people, and then that they're doing tournaments and things like that. So, and then obviously larger tournaments are like the culmination of that. But um, I don't know. I mean, like there's a lot of warbands in the game right now. I almost don't. I don't know. There's just so many of them. There's a lot of bloat. So I'm not. I'm just not really sure about um, like how excited I am for new warbands. I'm sure that they'll be fun to play. Uh, I don't know. What do you? I mean, I guess there's so many things that a new season is going to bring. Am I excited for new cards and mechanics? In some ways, yeah. Am I excited for uh, Beastgrave going away? I think I might be. There's a lot of really good cards that we use all the time that are not going to be there anymore, like Distraction and Spectral Wings and whatever else that we're going to have to find replacements for, and it might make deck building a lot more interesting. The warbands themselves, I think I'll always like to play new warbands, but I think we have so many warbands that warband choice isn't really like a limitation right now. I don't know. It's weird because like I want to play new stuff, but as soon as I'm used to the new stuff, I'm going to be like, oh, what do I play now? There's like 50 options. And the Agents of Sigmar said it was like when you're trying to watch something on Netflix and you're like, everything is here, and like I've seen a lot of it already.
That's actually really funny. It's a good analogy, though.
Yeah.
To answer your question, I think for me, there are two things that I would want for the game so that I would be more enthused to play it. Um, I think, I just want to clarify again. I love this game. I'll continue to talk about this game. I'll continue to play this game. But for it to be like the game that I play 100%, my main focus, I think I need there to be support from Games Workshop and independent community organizers for the game, for tournaments to be run. Like, they're opening up a new Citadel in LA.
Yeah.
And like, if all the events were like 2 in LA, 2 in Grapevine near Dallas, and 2 were random tournaments across the year, like that's 6 tournaments I can go to in a year. That's fine. I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
You know, And so Games Workshop, I think, has a lot of control over that. I think they should be added to the US Open, so it could be part of that. Who knows? Maybe next year, if they even do the US Open again. But I think secondly, which agrees with your point, is I need more people to start playing this game locally,
Yeah.
but even nationally. I think at this point, um, I don't care if no one else plays in Houston for the next 2 years, but if like 300 more people play in the country, I'd be happy with that. Um, when I mean play,
Yeah.
like get into it, play championship. And I think
Yeah. Try to win
the biggest
tournaments. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and I think what helps a lot is the prize support, and that's a COVID issue, 100%. So when
Yeah.
prize support, if and when it does come back, I think that's going to be huge because people love getting stuff. Like they come, they play some games, they may not care if they win, they just want all the art, the alternate art. Cool, dude, you'll get
Yeah.
it. Just play your 3 games or whatever, 4 games. Um, but what I would really like to see is Games Workshop addressing the fact that this game is complex for a multitude of different reasons. Um, and it might not be necessarily easy for a new player to get in anymore at this point. I think it's really hard. You mentioned this earlier in the podcast. It's very difficult. You have to learn a bunch of rules that just how the game works. Then you have to learn the 2 warbands that come in whatever starter set you bought, or core box, or game set, or whatever.
Yeah.
Then you have to learn every other warband that you might come against. We're in
Mhm.
the 40s now, or we're getting close to the 40s. Then you have to confirm the rules with an errata, and
Yeah.
then depending on the format, you have to use the format's rules.
Yeah.
And in some cases, the championship format has rules that are not in the rule book, as we've been
Yeah.
seeing with the board rule, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to understand all the boards as well, and what may be good for you and what not. So that's a lot right there. And you know what? Maybe other games require that much investment to get into. So you're in any game you want to play, you're going to lose a lot until you start winning. That's how it
Yep.
works. So I can be okay with all of that, but then there needs to be changes to other things. Then, like, do we need to rotate warbands out at this point? Maybe, maybe not. Or do we need to cycle warbands? We're saying, hey, in season 5, we're going to do Dire Chasm and we're going to do whatever next season is called. But we're going to remove certain warbands from the eligibility pool. So you can only
Yeah.
use X number of warbands. So it's limited, it's controlled. The cards are designed for these warbands to interact with them, etc. But hey, go have fun in Relic if that's what you want to do. Or Vanguard Plus.
Yeah.
Then I think what I would also need is some sort of streamlining of the game. Um, to where
Hmm.
like maybe we don't need like if a card or a rule needs a page of an errata or
Yeah.
even a paragraph, it's probably not a good rule. Let's change it. Let's make it a little bit different. Um,
Yeah.
I would also say that adding to the game, like if aggro's biggest weakness is board roll off and spending maybe a third of their games, a third of the game itself, they'll have to be running up against the board. Then maybe let's implement a rule that says, hey, I win the board once, and whoever wins it, you get the board next,
Yeah.
and then we can roll off for the third. So we
Yeah.
have equal fair share of trying to play our game. Conversely, then you can do things, and that evolves to so many other things like, oh, can a fighter, can a fighter do other actions? Like, why does it have to be move, charge, attack, guard, draw a card, switch an objective? Could it
Yeah.
be I can move again? Could it be that there's a brand new action where I can double my move, but then I get a charge token, or I lose a defense, or I'm not able
Yeah.
to do anything? Like there's so many things that you can do to solve some of the challenges that new players are facing. And then like control. We've talked about that a little bit, but I would say limit those designs, and that starts with the design team and with the play testers. But I get it; it's not easy to do those things. You have God knows how many people are working on it. Maybe let's say like 4 or 5 people, 2 or 3 people at Games Workshop who are designing all this stuff, and then you have play testers. God knows how many they are, right? And it's not easy because let's say you have 20 play testers. Those 20 people can only do so much by themselves. The real stuff happens when it gets out in the wild, right? When like everybody gets their hands on it and stuff breaks, and maybe
Yeah.
people miss things, stuff like that.
But that just means you
So
need more FARs.
exactly, and that's my next
Yeah.
point is like stay on top of the game. If you said that after every release you'll give me a FAR 2 weeks after, I'd
Oh
love
wow.
you.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
say hell yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Or at the very least within 30 days. Or you know what? Screw it. If you said, hey, non-negotiable, 4 times a year is when we're going to drop the FAR. These are the 4 dates we'll do it.
Sure.
I'll be like, all right,
Well, I
fine.
mean, like you were saying with like you want like 6 major tournaments, like it wouldn't be that hard to do six FAQs before that.
Yeah.
Like,
If you're gonna run a Games Workshop sanctioned event at a Citadel,
yeah,
make sure the FAR comes before that. There should be some communication there,
right.
internally. Again, I don't know what that looks like inside Games
But
Workshop.
I mean, and they do the big events in the UK and stuff too, and like all of those need an FAQ like right before that too. So just six, four, even I think 4 a year would be fine. You know?
Yeah. And then just make the game more accessible for new people. Like, oh,
Yeah,
do I? Because like the biggest complaint we saw in this survey is people feel like they have to buy everything.
yeah,
So how can you like let's talk about it. How do you think you can make the game more easy for people to play, but they don't have to buy everything? Well, I think the biggest gimmick with Underworlds, right, is like in order to play at the optimal level, you have to buy every board band because it has universal cards. You have to
yeah,
buy every board pack because it has a board and universal cards. We all have to buy Arena Mortis, even though the majority of the community has a negative attitude towards it, because if we want to compete at the highest level or locally, whether it's nationally, locally, internationally, we have to use those cards because
right.
they're some very good cards in there for certain strategies. So how do you do that? Well, maybe reduce the number of the universal cards, period. Or
Yeah,
maybe just say like universal cards are separate from, other cards. Or um,
yeah.
you don't need
That's one of the things that Agents of Sigmar said too. Is like there's just so many cards, and most of them are bad, and the like having to buy everything is just kind of ridiculous. So.
it kind of is. Like I'm telling you, dude, like if I didn't get all this stuff for free because I review it and I spend, and we spend time like writing articles and like doing podcast episodes that take out of our like free time. Like remember the week of 5 podcasts? Crazy, you
Yeah,
know? Like it
yeah.
was so stressful. Then like I would start questioning things like, you know, like think about season one. I heard like somewhere someone told me like a statistic that like Chosen Axis were sold really well, you know.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, it's not because Chosen Axis are good. It's because that card set came with Ready for Action and Earthquake.
Oh yeah. I mean, basically, if you play this game, you just treat it like a subscription product, and you just have to buy everything if you want to play it competitively. That's what
But
you
then let
do.
me ask you this: like, let's say you love orcs
Yeah.
and you play orcs in 40K, you play orcs in Age of Sigmar, you have an orc kill team, you have an orc Blood Bowl team, and you want to
Yeah.
play orcs in Warhammer Underworlds. But you don't like to buy anything else. You think elves look dumb. You think
Yeah.
humans aren't
Yeah.
cool
Yeah. Yeah.
because you're a human and whatever, right? So then but you have to buy fish elves just so your
Well,
orcs can play better.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Well, I mean, if you
why?
were if you were an orc player, you would own 35 warbands, and three of them would be orcs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where is the sense
Yeah.
in that?
Well, I mean, and so the
You know?
obvious solution that people have basically said forever is that the universal shouldn't be in the warband boxes.
Agreed. They should come. I really liked the Silent Menace thing.
Yeah.
Where it was like a prepackaged deck. It was a terrible deck, but it was prepackaged, and like technically, it could work with any warband.
Yeah.
You're
I
not
mean,
gonna you're not gonna win very many games with it, but like technically, it could, right?
yeah. Yeah.
There's so many things that they can do, and I think they do hear it, they do see it. I know, I've been very lucky to make friends at Games Workshop. I know they read and listen to the content, and it's like, you have to, and like, even like, you have a buddy on, the events team, and you're friends with the manager of the Citadel. Like
Yeah.
they all read, they're all consumers as well. It's just, I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know.
a it's
I
it's
get really
frustrating.
passionate about
Yeah.
it because, yeah, because I care. Like I've spent so much, like yeah, but I
Yeah.
can only talk to myself. But I really do mean you as well. But for me specifically, like we have spent so much time on this game. We became friends over this game. Like now I'm going to your wedding. Like think about that. Like how much
Yeah.
this game has done for us, and and our other friends we've made. And it just sucks to see like it die, and people who like have helped grow the game leave away, like step away from the game. Like look at John. Can you roll a crit is all about kill team right now, and that might just be like the hot like flavor of the month. But
Yeah.
like look at
Well, I
his
mean,
YouTube
Aegis of
views.
Sigmar too.
Yeah, they did the same thing. Both of their YouTube kill team content get more views than their Underworlds content.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like you can look at the numbers on YouTube.
It'd be
Um,
interesting to know how many people that currently play or that played Underworlds in the last couple of years have currently, moved over to Kill Team, however temporarily.
Everyone I know just doesn't. They just play other things.
Yeah.
Like even Matt from Set the Tempo, he's been in our Discord and our Patreon Discord. He's been sharing pictures of his Sigmar army,
Yeah.
Stormcast
Yeah.
Eternals. And I'm like, oh, this is really cool. Like I thought you were just gonna just paint and play, but you've built a whole army, a display board. And he was like, yeah, man, like everyone plays Age of Sigmar here. And he's like, and it's tired. He's like, I love Beard Arm, I love Captain Murder, but I
Yeah.
can only play Underworlds against the same 2 or 3 people so much.
Yeah.
Everyone else
Exactly.
is playing, and he's like he's pumping out content crazy every week. But this is
Yeah.
how he feels. Like imagine how other people feel as well. Like we haven't seen any updates. This is not a call out. I'm just stating, like Steel City, like
Yeah.
haven't no podcasts, no articles. We've slowed down significantly on Path to Glory. We didn't even finish our written article for Arena Mortis 2. Sorry, by the way, I know you worked hard on that one, but like
Yeah.
like the only thing I did for like that we did for Arena Mortis aside from that is like take better pictures of the cards and send them to Astropol so he could upload them
Yeah.
on the website.
Well,
Like that's
we should finish that article.
yeah, 100%. But like the thing is like we're
Yeah.
but this what's the point? Um, we already did a podcast on it, but I guess that's what I'm saying is and I get it. COVID. Everyone says that, but I'm
I
telling
do
you, it's
think it
not.
makes it a lot harder, but
But it's not the sole
I think there
reason.
are other issues. Yeah. Yeah.
Like a lot of people like to slap. But anyways, um, I don't know. I don't want to rant. I'm really not. I really hope that didn't come off as one. I'm just saying, like, I'm just trying to throw out ideas because I'm a little frustrated
Yeah.
and
Yeah. I mean,
I
it's
want to go
difficult.
compete again and I want to do what we love.
Yeah. I mean, if there was a player that was looking for a competitive game and they wanted to play this game and they said, what do I need to do to get into it? Like, I wouldn't feel great about telling them everything they need to do to get into it. All right, you need to buy these 18, these 16 warbands and, 5 of them are worth playing. And then what you really want is like, you want these warbands you can't even buy anymore because like Thorns are still good and like Grimwatch are still good and, all that. So, like, that's going to be tricky. Like, if season 5, when you can't buy Grimwatch anymore and and Hrothgorn and Crushes and they're still really good, like, is that good for the game? I don't know.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Like if you're not going to sell it in your stores, you shouldn't let it in your game.
Yeah, at least in
But then like,
the main format,
but
yeah.
people, yeah. So I don't know. I'm and like if someone was like, hey, like Amon, should I get into Warhammer Underworlds? I'm gonna be honest. I would probably say no.
Well, especially if they
I
were
don't.
like, I really like MCP, Kill Team, and Underworlds. Which one should I pick? It would be difficult to be like, well, it's definitely Underworlds.
Yeah. But if someone was like, "Hey, I want to get like you play Underworlds, right?" I'd be like, "Yeah." Like, okay, yeah, yeah. So like, what do you think? I'm like, I think it's a great game, etc. Yada yada yada. There's some flaws, but every game has flaws, whatever. And they'd be like, "All right, well, so like, what do I need to buy?" Like, and to your point, I would also feel bad. But then
Yeah,
people would be like, then people can say, "Oh, well, just tell them to play Vanguard." But I feel like that's being dishonest because like
right.
no one plays Vanguard, at least in my area. I wish they did. I wish they played something. But then like, what I'm going to say? Oh yeah, just like just wait till season 5 comes out and then buy 2 warbands and then I'll play with you. Um,
Yeah,
that it's not gonna be fun for me. Maybe I'm like helping someone learn the game and that there's a joy in that. But after a while, I'm gonna be like, look, dude, you need to buy more stuff, or like I can't,
yeah,
play Get over and over again.
yeah,
Um, so but then also it's like, dude, there's no community that's local or even national at this point. Um,
yeah,
like if you look at our Underworld's Discord, most of the people playing and running reps are like live in Europe,
yeah. That's true.
you know? And if I
Although,
want
I
to go to my
mean,
local game store
I think there have been a few tournaments recently in the U.S. with like 6 or like 10 people. So I mean, maybe it's
on
starting
an
back to
international
pick up.
Discord server, 6 and 10 people,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I
like
mean, if if there were 10 people in every, if there were like tournaments of 10 people in every city, then that would be one thing. But it's like I know of 2, so yeah,
yeah. I guess the at the risk of sounding bleak, like I guess my reality is that it's pretty bleak in Houston.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
No, I agree.
and it's hard to get events. Just go to events nationally. And COVID again has a place there, but it's not the sole reason because every other game is taking off.
Right.
It's like in my community, if I go into a local Warhammer store or I go to any independent, retailer, it's hard to not watch, like, to run into someone playing Kill Team or MCP right now. Not to mention
Yeah.
40K and Age of Sigmar.
Well, I mean, I sort of feel like a Games Workshop doesn't really push it, especially locally. Like, I don't know if, like, if I went into a local Games Workshop and asked them about the game, I don't know if they would even be able to tell me anything about it. Um, Not really. Like, I don't think most of them play it anymore. I don't know if there's
That's
like,
insane.
I mean,
That's like
I
that's
could be
crazy.
wrong. I could be wrong, but I mean, some of the people I know have played it a couple times just so that they can say they kind of know how it works, and then
Yeah,
and like if I worked at a Games Workshop store and I was trying to sell people product, this is not the most lucrative product. So I don't know if this is the one I would push either, but I think it's a little tricky. Like obviously, I would just want people to play 40K or Age of Sigmar.
yeah.
Yeah,
I know a
and
couple
maybe it's
store
more.
owners
I'm sure
who,
it's more complicated than that, but
yeah,
I'm sure if someone was interested in Underworlds, they would say, "Well, great, this is what you need to do." But I don't know if they're going to particularly, I don't know if they're going to particularly sell it as the competitive one because they don't really seem to like competitive stuff that much. Um, it's more about the miniatures, it's more about the fluff and things, which is great. But I don't know. I don't know if Games Workshop likes is as excited about the no holds barred competitive nature of the game that we enjoy. I almost feel
yeah,
like it's an accident that like the game turned out as competitive as it is.
perhaps. And kudos to Dave Sanders and
Oh
the rest
yeah,
of the Underworlds team who like made it, designed it from the ground up. Um, and I think that could be a culture clash, you know.
yeah,
But I don't know, man. Like I know a lot of people who like to play games competitively,
yeah,
um, and they just play the games that they like, which is absolutely important. Um,
yeah.
so I don't know. Maybe there's a disconnect, So hopefully, the Games Workshop can figure it out. But that's kind of been my grievances with the game, right? Like, am I going to stop playing? No. Am I going to stop writing about it? No. Am I going to start doing a podcast with you? No, I'm not going to stop
Yeah,
because I love this game and I love my community. And unfortunately, whether it's local or online or on our patrons, I'm not going to lie. Like our patrons are like my biggest, one of the biggest reasons why like I want to keep going is because I feel like we owe them the content and the thought, and they like listening to us. That's why they support us.
yeah.
And so I want to keep creating the best content that we can, but I also want this platform to be somewhere we can be honest. And I
Sure,
think
yeah,
right now, this is probably the biggest lull in the game that we've had. Like I was unenthused in Beastgrave, but that was because I had to get used to playing the game very differently. Um,
yeah. It changed a lot.
but
Yeah,
but I'm not. I think Diarchasm was phenomenal and did a lot of good things for this game, from miniatures perspective and from a game perspective. And I hope the trend continues. But I don't know. I don't know. I feel like the game needs to get a refresh, like drop second edition. That's what Kill Team did. Put the
yeah,
buzzword "new edition" on the game, and it sells like crazy. So maybe
yeah,
that's what the game needs. I don't know.
yeah. That makes sense. Let's go to patron questions. I think, but I think we'll just continue this. Some of these thoughts here. Um, the, I have the first one here from Matt. In light of the thoughts on the state of the game, what is your biggest hope for season 5? What is your biggest regret for Diarchasm? Are there any warbands you've retired that you have little to no interest in playing again? It's a lot there. Um,
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and take this one?
sure. So I guess my biggest hope for season 5 is just that people like it and it gets popular because I think that's the main thing that I want is more people. Um, what is my biggest regret for Diarchasm? I think it's unfortunate that it happened during COVID because I think it actually was a pretty good season, and I think that if
Yeah.
we are going to blame the lack of support, both FAQ wise and event wise and all that on COVID, then I think that's I think that's my biggest thing. Is I actually think that this was a good season. If there had been 4 FAQs or if there had been an FAQ and there had been like 3 FARs this whole season, instead of the one at the beginning and then the one kind of in the middle, I think this would have been like a different, like night and day difference. And if there had been 5 major tournaments to go to during the last year and a half or 2 years, um, I think we would have had a blast. So I think that's probably a lot of
Agreed.
my disappointment um, with the thing in general. But um, as far as the season itself, hunger is kind of a disappointment. It just doesn't work, and that's kind of the next question. But um, I don't. Hunger is disappointing to me. Are there any warbands I've retired that I have little to no interest in playing? Um, at this point, I probably won't play anything from season one that's not Skaven or Magor's Fiends. Probably won't play anything from season two that's not uh, Godsworn Hunt and Gits and Thorns. Probably won't play anything from season three that is not Wild Hunt, Grimwatch, Wrathgorn. Um, I don't like crushes. Never really have. Season four. Um, I don't know. I'll probably play Dread Pageant somewhere. Probably play Harrows. I might not play Harrows. I want a tournament with them, so I kind of tend to retire stuff after that. But uh, I don't know. I mean, I would say fully half. I would be surprised if I just don't play half the warbands again.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I kind of
In
agree with a lot of that.
like, I think as warbands come out, like you just get a new version of an old warband. Like, why would I play orcs? Or why would I play Ironskill's Boys if I could play Magors? Why would I play Ravagers if I could play Magors? So I'm just going to play the most interesting version of that archetype pretty much every time. Is what I'm expecting.
Yeah. I think for me, I think actually spent a lot of time answering the first question is like, what is my biggest hope for season five?
Yeah.
Um, or maybe what I'd like to see. I think to maybe funnel it down, biggest hope is for refreshing new mechanics, more meaningful cards, um, more meaningful choice within the game, and super cool warbands.
Yeah.
Everyone loves warbands. I want to see some really cool stuff. I think I think it's pretty easy to infer what the first two warbands are, especially since one of them has been already revealed. Um, but I think that's really exciting. Like I don't think like a lot of people groan at Stormcast, which is presumably what everyone assumes is the second warband in the set. I don't. I think Stormcast are cool. I like Space Marines. I like Stormcast. Nothing wrong with that. Um,
Yeah.
so I guess a good Stormcast warband would be nice.
I
Um, they've been struggling lately, and
think people
some
just
really
have
funky
curse
stuff.
breaker PTSD.
Yeah, Um, biggest regret for Direcasm. I think I think you mentioned a lot of the important parts. Lack of events could have been a great season if COVID had kind of taken a step back quicker, perhaps. Um, I think like part of Direcasm felt like a lot of ideas weren't fully realized. Um,
Yeah.
Hunger you mentioned, which we'll get into in the next question. Primacy even like still doesn't know how it works properly. Um, there was no consensus. There's no errata. Um, Quarry and Hunter, I think, kind of got more support, but I think Quarry just became better and Hunter didn't. Um,
Yeah, I would say Quarry kind of works, but it doesn't work in a way that makes sense.
yeah, you kind of just stand on objectives and be Quarry. Um,
Yeah.
I think my biggest regret for Darkasm is probably Ravagers, honestly. Um,
Oh, yeah.
I feel like that warband had a lot of potential. Um, and unfortunately, even the beta rule didn't really do much to solve the issue. I think what the
Yeah.
change that everyone thinks would help, which is for them to just simply hold objectives, fundamentally disagrees with the way that they've been designed. Because obviously, Games Workshop doesn't want them to hold objectives; they want them to desecrate them. So
Yeah.
that's been a little unfortunate. For warbands that I've retired or have little no interest in playing, it's really hard to answer that question because, like, if I can make an older warband work, I'll play it.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's worth your time a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was yawning there. Um, like going through like the quick list, like I think that's really novel to play Garrick's Reavers. but like, do Wild Hunt or Godsworn Hunt or Ideneth do it better? Probably. Um, Same with Steelhearts. Like, I really want Steelhearts to work. Like, on paper, it looks really good. You have two fighters that hit for 3 damage off the bat for 2 smash. Um, and then one fighter who hits for 3 smash, 2 damage. Like, those are inspired weapon profiles that these people start with, you know? But their cards suck. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
Well, and
So,
somebody's going to do it better. Crushers are going to do something similar better. Uh,
yeah.
well, and the funny thing is that even if the Crushers weren't better, if Steelhearts were still playable, there would still be people warbands under them that weren't. Like, there's only probably like 6 archetypes. Like,
Yeah.
there's
I mean,
always going to be
even
one
even
objective
archetype, I
warband that's
think,
the best.
is yeah, or at least two, that are in
Sure.
contention for top spot.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, but like warbands that I have no interest in playing, I'm gonna be honest, Chosen Axes. Never done it for me. They never will.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy the Sepulchral Guard either. Um, if you told me that I could make Iron Skull's boys work, I would do it because I just think they're so much full of character and fun.
Yeah.
Um, I have no interest playing Mollog.
Yep.
I think I've kind of retired Profiteers just because like we had a lot of success with them both as a group and as individuals. Um, but they're ones that I think about a lot. But
Yeah.
I just they don't play the way that I enjoyed playing them. So I think that's my biggest thing. But if you like, like we tried a game the other day or a couple months ago, maybe it was last year. We put it on YouTube where it was like I played some silly, Guardians deck.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's a really cool idea of wanting to make older warbands work, and I appreciate the people who do it. I think it's really hard for me to retire a warband. But if Games Workshop said, "Hey, you can't play anything in the first 2-3 seasons moving forward," I'd be okay with that.
Oh yeah.
Um, but retired, probably Guard, Chosen Axes, Mollog, Condemners because they have no hope. I've never enjoyed
Yeah.
Wormspat, so if Glass ever comes around and I care about winning one with every warband, I'll try it and I'll put it down. But no interest in Morgwaite's Blade Coven. No interest in Hrothgorn, honestly. Um,
Yeah.
I've kind of retired Ravagers for now just because it hurts my heart. Um,
Yeah.
and that's really it. So like, I still would love to play so many warbands in this game.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. There's
I'm also
some
like
of
a meta
them.
player, so I play what's
Yeah.
good.
I would say I've only retired for sure. The ones that I've won events with, because for some reason, I don't know, that has a sense of finality to it that I enjoy. I guess where I'm like, yeah, I remember that, and I feel like I figured it out enough to win whatever tournament that was, and then move on to trying to do the same thing with something else. But um, so maybe that's what he means by retired. But there's some that I'm just not that interested in, which I think is fine, but because there's so many of them. Let's go to the next question from Hussman. You've mentioned on a few occasions doing an end phase on using hunger and other warbands. Have you both reached the conclusion that it's not worth discussing because vamps are the only warband that can use hunger reliably? It definitely seems to me like it's not worth the effect. What do you think?
Yes.
Yeah. It was interesting. I actually, when he asked this question, I thought about it again and I actually pulled up a deck builder and I tried to make a deck that I considered to be a hunger themed deck where like the goal was to get hunger and like score glory off of it and things like that. And I don't think it's possible at all. I think you could make a deck that has some cards that mention the word hunger in it. There are some of those that are solid enough to take in a deck, but it's sort of by happenstance, and it's not something that you're actually trying to do. You're not applying hunger cards to friendly or enemy fighters and then doing something with that in a meaningful way. I would say it just doesn't work at all. All of the objectives for hunger are, I would say, very low power, and then the couple that are decent, like it's just not worth the investment to apply the tokens. So I don't know. If someone could prove me wrong, that would be great. But I have not been able to figure it out. I mean,
Yeah.
I just feel like any warband that you try to make play hunger other than vampires is just going to be better if they do something else, and not a little bit better.
I'm the exact same way, and we've talked about this a
Yeah,
lot. Like any warband that comes with free a built-in mechanic that's supported by universal mechanics will always do better. Um,
right.
Hrothgorn, Hunter Quarry, Vamps,
Yep.
Hunger. I think the only exception, and I think it's only because again we're not really sure on how the mechanic works like fully, is Mad Mob. But like Primacy is also like a really nice universal rule.
Yeah.
Like it's a blanket rule for the game. It like
Well, I mean, we can talk about mechanically why primacy works, hunger doesn't. I mean, what hunger is it's a combo, because you play cards to apply tokens, and then other cards trigger off of that. So you have a starter and you have a
right.
trigger, and the triggers are dead until the starter condition is met. So you have too many
Yeah.
cards that rely on too many other things. It's just like the combo mechanic where you have to have one upgrade and then you have to have the other upgrade, and neither one is really good by itself. So it just doesn't work. Like from a card playing perspective, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Um,
Whereas Primacy works because if you
right.
just play the game, it'll come into effect.
Well, I would say that the main criticism I have of primacy is that it works without any primacy cards at all. And like, I mean, you have to have the one, but basically once you have the one, you get probably 75% of the benefit you would get from the primacy mechanic, um, just by getting the extra glory from the kills. And I would say actually right now most people play more anti-primacy than they do pro-primacy with cards like Underdog and Everything to Prove.
Right.
Um, I mean, in some ways, this game is fairly simple. You win by having more glory. So anything that's going to get you more glory is going to be good. And primacy can get you three more glory. So it is worth investing in. Um, but it's hunger isn't going to get you glory by itself, and hunger is optional. Whereas if I play primacy, you have to play primacy as well. So I actually think that's something that's really cool about it. But that's why it works, and some of these other mechanics that just feel like they fall flat don't, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think very well said for sure. Next question is from Magor. Should Games Workshop reset Warhammer Underworlds from the ground up like Kill Team did? Release a new compendium style book where people should play all the warbands and update them so we could all play.
Mm.
What do you think?
Is that what they did with Kill Team? I haven't really been paying attention. Is there like a book that has all the rules for
Yeah, they
all the
just dropped
different
a
armies?
compendium that pretty much says like if you want to play any of the current existing factions in the game,
Yeah.
like whatever army you own, etc., here are the rules for it.
Mm.
Um, so you kind of just flip to the page, and you have the fighters and the stats and their special rules. So you kind of have to have the book open until you memorize everything.
Right.
Um, but yeah, that's kind of what they did. They just reset everything, which I think that's
Hmm.
logistically a little bit different with Underworlds because like um, the faction cards are super important.
Yeah.
But I think like honestly, I'd be pretty cool with them just saying like update. Here's a book you got to pay $20 for, $30 for, but we've updated every single warband
Oh my gosh.
from the first three seasons, change their fighter cards and stats. And so you'll need this book to play with the fighter cards. Um, and then, your the faction cards stay the same until we decide to update them. Or I think that'd be kind of cool.
Hmm.
I think that does something to bring them more in line. Like imagine like giving Bright Shield like different rules, you know, or maybe making her 2 block from the start,
Yeah.
you
I think
know?
it's tough. I think it's tough because the so I mean, to take the question, do I think they should reset Warhammer Underworlds from the ground up? I think that would be very interesting. If they did, I don't think I would want them to use the old warbands. I think I would want them to start the game over. Um, I think I would want them to come out with like four warbands at once and say this is Underworlds 2. Um, and then I mean, but that would be disappointing to everybody that owns all of this Warhammer Underworld stuff. So I'm not really sure if that would work. But from a competitive gameplay, like for the best game, I almost feel like it needs a reset. But I don't know. I don't know how to make 30 warbands work. Um, I don't know. I mean, are there any other games with this many factions? And if we extrapolate out 4 years, there's going to be twice as many. Like maybe something like League of
No.
Legends, like video
Yeah.
games, you know. Um, but I don't know. I mean, I guess League of Legends will just redo certain warbands, but it's a little bit different because they're not physical things you have to own. And you can still buy any fighter in League of Legends or whatever. Um, so I'm not really sure. I mean, I guess it would make sense to do that, but then people will be like, well, how do I buy these things? and I guess you could make them available for sale.
Well, all the
Um,
miniatures are available for purchase
yeah, that's
on the
true.
website.
I guess if the
You know,
cards were in the book or something, but
I think that's totally acceptable. If you
I
just put the
guess
cards in the book
it's 1,000 cards though.
for all the,
I mean, 4 seasons is like 1,000 cards. Yeah.
well, you can put 9 to a page. That's still a lot of
Yeah,
pages, I
I
guess.
guess it's a lot. Yeah.
What's 1,000 divided by 9?
I mean, a
What's the
thousand
math?
divided by 100 is 10. So
Yeah, well, there you go. So like 12, I mean, that's enough. 12, 13, 14, whatever pages. Like,
no, it would be like 100 pages.
oh, did I do the wrong math wrong? Yeah. Well, then
It'd be a
maybe
lot.
that's too much. But
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. All I want to do is play the game. So like investment, the sunk cost fallacy aside, if they started a new game that was basically Underworlds again, but with better rules and different art and new miniatures and stuff like um, and there were 4 playable war bands, and then maybe they would bring back some of the. I mean, if they'd redid some of the old war bands with new rules and new models and stuff, I don't think I would mind that. But I'm not. I'm just not sure how this model sustains itself in a long period of time. I mean, there's going to be, presumably, if it's 8 war bands a season, after 8 seasons, you have 80 war bands, or whatever, or 10
I
seasons, you
would
have
go
80 war bands.
crazy with 80 war bands.
I mean, in 10 seasons, you'll have 80 war bands. How do you do that?
You don't.
How does the game work with 80
It
warbands? Like
doesn't.
it just doesn't. Yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Because then you'll have someone who like started in season 8 and then they go to an event and someone brings Thorns of the Briar Queen and you're like, what is this? Like,
Yeah.
how does this even make sense?
I mean, it's at some point it's not competitive anymore.
No.
So I don't know. I mean, it's curious. I don't know how to solve the problem, and I'm interested to see what they do. I mean, the interesting thing about Kill Team is they aren't coming out with new Kill Teams. Like, not really. They might come out
Well,
with
they
one or two
are.
here
They
and there.
will. They will.
Sure,
Yeah.
but
They're
but
like unique kill teams. Like they said, like every couple months they're gonna drop like a box of 2 kill teams fighting each other.
but what is
Like,
that going to be like?
so it's just gonna be like kind of like the Octarius box. It's my
Yeah,
presumption. It'll be like 2 bespoke war bands that are unique. So
but
like
are they like Kagra's Ravagers, or are they like
they're like Krieg.
sure.
Like you can only play Orc Commandos and Krieg if
Right,
you
right, right.
own the box with the rules that have it for them. But if you want to play Imperial Guardsmen or regular orcs, just buy the compendium.
Understood. Yeah, yeah. But I
So
guess I just mean if they do, Kill Team season 3, it's not that hard for them to say, well, we have. I mean, most likely they're not going to do 8 of those a year,
no,
and when they do a refresh, they might leave some of them behind. Um,
yeah,
I would think. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. I just if they're not, if for some reason they're deciding to do the same model in Kill Team, that doesn't make any sense to me.
no,
Um,
they won't be.
I mean,
It's
ideally, I
just
think you have 10 of them and they're all interesting to play, and maybe you come out with new missions, maybe you come out with new models. I mean, basically, what they did the first time with Kill Team seemed fairly reasonable to me. They came out with, a certain number of factions, and then they had like leaders, I think, and then they had like another expansion, and then it reset. And now you don't have leaders anymore, you don't have whatever anymore, and you're selling books that you have to throw away instead of warbands that are piling up. And
well, that's
you can
true.
play 2 years of Kill Team and only play one faction.
That's true. I guess what they could do in Underworlds is they could say, presumably if a season is 8 war bands, then you say these are the 8 war bands eligible in the championship season this year, and then here are 8 other war bands from the previous seasons that we're going to make eligible this year, and you just rotate it.
That would be interesting, yeah.
So then everyone can still play older war bands. They'll just take turns.
Yeah, they would have to be available for sale though. But yeah,
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure they could put 8. They have the stuff.
yeah,
If they're still selling the miniatures, it means the mold are still being used, which means the miniatures still being built.
I agree. Yeah,
So, or what they could do is just say like, "Hey, we redid 4 war bands this year that we've had in the past, and these
yeah.
4, 5, 6 war bands are now for resale." After that, they can just say, "Hey, you have to buy them again, but you get new card art, new rules, whatever, brand new stuff." But that just seems like kind of like either. Just make some cool stuff available again from the past. I think that'd be fine.
I
In
mean,
addition, in addition to anything else that we decide to redo in a release, if we indeed decide to do that.
I mean, At this point, I don't think anyone would be upset if they said you can only play the previous season and the current season.
I think you would lose. Yeah, so I think any decision they make will cause attrition because
Sure.
attrition is inevitable. I think any
Yeah,
change they make must ensure that new blood outweighs attrition. We need to be
I
a
agree with that.
positive pyramid, population pyramid, not
I agree with that.
Japan or Italy
Yeah,
because they're upside down,
yeah. Yeah, because
right?
realistically, if they make a change that I don't like and it's enough for me to stop playing, if 5 new people decide that that means they wanna start the game, then, I mean, it's probably the right decision. So, that's fair. I guess we have one other question, also from Magor. If you stop playing Warhammer Underworlds, what game would you play instead?
Super easy, MCP and kill team.
Yeah.
I'm more curious in
Um,
your answer.
yeah, I guess if I had unlimited time to start a new game and um, like learn to get competitive with it and then go to the tournaments and all those things, it might be it might just be 40K because I know I have a massive community local and I like a lot of the people in that community. So, and I've played it before. I've enjoyed it. I just like certain aspects of Underworlds better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't know if I'm a
Um,
big game person anymore. I'm more
no,
of a
I don't think I
skirmish game
am.
guy.
Yeah, I mean maybe Kill Team. I've sort of purposely like not looked too much at it because of it's hooks in me and I like it too
It's
much that
fun, man.
it's gonna derail too many other aspects of my life. So
It's a lot of fun.
yeah, yeah, I'm sure.
I do think that like worst case scenario, just me shooting off the top of the dome here. If Warhammer Underworlds does cease to exist at some point,
Yeah.
you can just restart Warhammer Underworlds with Warhammer 40K Underworlds, and it
Oh.
would sell so hot, it would be ridiculous.
Well, I mean, I think they have the hex. They're making a hex grid game that's like a small
It's called
game.
Fire Team,
Yeah, Fire Team. Yeah,
but it's just a board game, and they're not going to
yeah.
support it any more than that. It's just a gateway game, one and done.
It doesn't have cards either. I mean, if you know, if they said we're done with the game or we're going to stop supporting it, I'm sure there would be a community that still has everything and wants to play it. That's
Yeah.
happened with Star Wars, certain Star Wars games. Forget which one, but I mean, it has happened, and it seems
Oh,
like
with
it's
Armada.
maybe, yeah. Um, but so I mean, I think that's possible.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
even when Fantasy died, people just
yeah.
did Fantasy, and another company just kind of continued it, and they've made money off it, which is probably why Games Workshop doesn't like that. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, as much as we enjoy doing this and we don't have any plans to stop, I'm sure we won't do it forever. So it's
yeah,
the
but I
nature
mean,
of the thing.
if they were like, "Yo, dude, we're doing Warhammer 40K Underworlds," I'd say, "Okay, well, Path to Glory still exists, my friend. It's just now in the 41st millennium." So,
Yeah, I guess.
uh,
Yeah.
in addition to every flavor of Space Marine chapter possible, I think it'd be really cool.
I would
But
want to know. I would want to know how often the FARs were.
yeah. I
That
would
would.
literally just contact Games Workshop, be like, "Look, dude, hire me. Don't pay me anything. I got you."
Oh,
Um,
okay. You do have a
but
lot more free time sitting in front of the computer than you did before with your broken leg.
yeah, well, you know what? I still work,
Yeah.
so, but
Yeah.
yeah.
That's good.
Okay. Well, I think that's it for Patreon questions. And I think we actually made quite a good episode out of this. It's 2.5 hours. So for those of you who missed us, I hope that this whets the palate and sates the appetite until we come back.
Yeah, you can get another taste.
There you go. Um, Next episode, we will be talking about, I think, the Nations Cup.
Yeah, yeah.
This will be a good one. Spoiler, we got second.
Ooh.
Come on, got second again. But this is this is the whole team. Major shout out to the members of Team England, which is Michael Carlin, Dan Smedley, Davey, Jimmy, Nick Ramone, Ollie Bond, and Tom Bond. It was a lot of fun playing with them. Fantastic group of individuals.
And that's who won?
Russia.
Or you on Team
What?
England?
I'm on Team England. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
and we got second. We lost to Russia,
Mm.
who beat us by 1 point in the
Wow.
scoring system.
Wow.
So I think they were 362 and we were 361.
Hmm.
Um,
Was there a final or
no, it was just
points?
a like a group thing. I think at one point we were the only. Oh, it's 562 to Russia, 561 to England. We were the
Wow.
only team that was undefeated at one point. But then we played Russia and we lost pretty badly to them.
Mm.
But then we won the rest of our matchups pretty well. Um, and I think so did Russia. If we had both been tied at 562 or 561, then we would have won off tiebreakers. But they literally beat
Interesting.
us by 1 point. So,
Okay.
um,
Yeah. Well, I mean, if they beat you when you played, it's hard to feel too bad that you didn't get a
no, not at all.
chance. Yeah.
They kicked our butts, honestly. So,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
that'll be
we
exciting to talk about the dynamics and the decks and how all the matchups and stuff work. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so hoping to get a bunch of the team members on the episode. So
yeah,
it might be a ruckus, but it should be a fun one.
yeah, absolutely.
Um, And for the end phase episode, we've got something planned. So we'll be recording that shortly and then putting that out for our patrons as well. So
Great. Well, I think that's it for this episode. If you are a patron supporter, be sure to check out the end phase, which should be out soon. Once again, thanks to the supporters. If you'd like to join our current patrons, you can do so at patreon.com/path to glory. You can find all our blog content on path2glorypodcast.com. If you have any feedback, questions, or comments, let us know on Facebook, Twitter, or Discord at Path to Glory Podcast. Please rate and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen. As always, thanks for listening, and we wish you the best of luck on your path to glory.
hey, 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 I'll pay you money to play this game. Join my community.